He closed his peaceful eyes when the dark lord of shadows and the ruler of silent shades who prey upon men appeared at his bedside in a full shape. His temples gleamed with a false grey hair. A long beard covers his chest. His ash-coloured gown sweeps the floor with its trailing hem. A cowl dangles from his tonsured head, and to complete his disguise, he has a bound hempen rope round his lecherous loins, and fastened lattice sandals to his slow feet. Francis, so the story goes, looks like this when he wandered alone in the waste wilderness and among the filthy dens of wild animals, and impious himself carried the pious words of salvation to woodland folk, and tamed the wolves and Libyan lions.
Thus disguised, the crafty serpent parted his foul lips and uttered these words: "Do you sleep, my son? Does slumber overcome even your limbs? Unmindful of the faith and neglectful of your flocks, while a barbarous nation, born beneath the Hyperborean sky, ridicules your venerable throne and triple diadem, and while the British archers scorn your rights? Arise, come on, rise up, you sluggard, you whom the Roman emperor worships, you for whom the unlocked gates of heaven's vault lies open. Break their swelling spirits and insolent pride, and let these sacrilegious know the power of your curse, and what the keeper of the apostolic key can do. Remember to avenge the scattered Hesperian fleet, and the Iberian ensigns sunk in the deep, and the bodies of so many saints nailed to the shameful cross during the Thermodontian virgin's recent reign. But if you prefer to lie torpid in your soft bed, and refuse to crush your enemy's growing strength, he will fill the Tyrian sea with his numerous hosts, and plant his glittering standards on the Aventine hill. He will smash your ancient relics and burn them on the pyre, and trample your holy neck beneath his profane feet. You whose shoes kings once rejoiced to kiss. But do not challenge him to war or open conflict. That would be a wasted labour. A master of deceit uses guile. Against heretics, no subterfuge is disallowed."
And now their great king calls to Parliament patricians from the remotest parts of their country, the high-born men and venerable fathers in gowns and white hair. These you may scatter in the air, tear limb from limb, and burn to ashes if you ignite gunpowder under the foundations of the buildings in which they are assembled. Warn at once, therefore, any of the faithful still in England of this plan of action. Are there any among your followers who will hear the supreme papal commands and fail to act? When the people are still stunned and panicked by the blast, let the fierce Frenchman or the savage Spaniard invade, return in Britain to the age of Mary, and you, once again, will rule over the warlike English. Unless you prove timid, understand that all gods and goddesses support you, all those deities you worship on your feast days." So spoke the deceiver, and putting off his disguise, fled to Lethe, his unspeakably joyless kingdom.
Now Tithonia's rosy spouse opens the eastern gates and dresses the gilded earth with returning light. And still mourning the sad death of her black son, she sprinkles the mountain tops with ambrosial drops. And the doorkeeper of the starry fort shook off his slumber and rolled away the sweet dreams and visions of night.
There is a place shut up in eternal darkness and night, once the vast foundation of a ruined pile, now the den of fierce-eyed murder and fork-tongued treachery, both born and once fell from discord. Here, among the rubble and jagged rocks, lie unburied skeletons and cadavers thrust through with iron. Forever here, dark and cross-eyed, sits Guile, and here are seen strife and calumny, her jaws armed with fangs. Here are seen fury, 1,000 kinds of death, and fear, and bloodless horror flying around, and ghosts slide unceasingly through the violence and silences. The sentient earth wails and rots in blood. Even murder and treachery themselves cower in the depths of that cave, and, though no one pursues them through the cave, a horrible cave, jagged with rocks and black with deathly shadows, they retreat guiltily, ever looking backward. The Babylonian priest summons these champions of Rome, loyal to her through ages long. And this, he says, on the world's western edge, summoned by the sea, there dwells a people hateful to me. Prudent nature refused to connect them with our continent, because they were unworthy. Thither bend your course with all celerity, such is my command, and let the king and all his nobles, the whole wicked brood, and enlist this plot, any who are fired with zeal for the true faith and ministers of the work. He ended, and fell pair eagerly obeyed him.
Meanwhile, the Lord who turns the heaven's great sphere, and sends the lightning from his ethereal citadel, looks down and laughs at the vain attempts of the wicked crew, and will defend his people's cause himself. There is, men say, a place that looks out on Lake Areopagitica, which separates the Asian continent from fertile Europe. Here stands the high tower of Fame, daughter of the Titaness, brazen, broad, full of noise, and nearer to the twinkling stars than Athos or Pelion piled up on Ossa. 1,000 doors and entrances stand open, and as many windows, and the spacious halls within shine through the thin walls. Here a swarming crowd sends up a confused murmur, like the buzzing of flies around the milking pails, or through the wattled sheepfords when the dog star scales the steepest of heavens to its summer height. Fame herself, her mother's avenger, sits at the topmost pinnacle, and raises her head, studded all around with countless ears. With these she can detect even the tiniest sounds, and catch the faintest whisper from the remotest corners of the globe. Not even you, son of Aristor, cruel guardian of higher Isis, has so many eyes rolling in your cruel face as she. Eyes that never doze in silent sleep. Eyes that sweep far and wide over the lands below. With these she often penetrates unlighted places, where even the sun's rays cannot go. Then, her 1,000 tongues wagging, she carelessly divulges all she has heard and seen to anyone. Now with lies she dilutes the truth, and sometimes she embellishes it with her own confections.
But still, Fame, you have deserved praise in our song for one good report, and there was never a rumour more truly honest. You are worthy of our song, and I shall never regret having commemorated you at such length in my verse. We English, who were plainly saved by your good offices, wandering goddess, render to you just thanks. God, who tends the eternal fires in their motions, hurled down a thunderbolt, and then, the earth still trembling, addressed you. Are you silent, Fame? Is this the band of impious papists hidden from your sight? This crudest has conspired against me and my Britons, and this novel kind of murder being planned against King James?
No more, said he, but she responded at once to the thunderous commands, and, through swifter flight before, now she puts on creaking wings and covers her thin body with party-coloured plumes. In her right hand she takes the sonorous Tamesian trumpet. Without delay, she beats the yielding air with her wings. And, not content to outstrip the rushing clouds, she soon leaves behind her the winds and the horses of the sun. As usual, she first spreads ambiguous rumours and vagaries throughout the English towns, and then, in a clear voice, she makes public the plots and foul deeds of treason, unspeakably horrible, and she even names the authors of the crime. Nor does she the garrulity conceal the places prepared for this ambush. Her news amazes young men, frightened girls, weak old men alike. People of all ages are suddenly struck to the heart by the sense of such a great disaster.
But meanwhile, the Heavenly Father looked down from above with pity on his people, and thwarted the papists' cruel attempt. They are seized and taken off to severe punishments. Sacred incense is burned, and grateful honours paid to God. All the joyous crossroads smoke with genial fumes. The young people dance in crowds, for in all the year there is no day more celebrated than the 5th of November.
Hello, welcome to Christ College. I'm going to be reading out of vacation exercise in the college, which Milton wrote while he was studying here. Hail native language that by sinews weak didst move my first endeavoring tongue to speak, and madest imperfect words with childish trips, half unpronounced, slide through my infant lips, driving dumb silence from the portal door, where he has mutely sat 2 years before. Here I salute thee, and I pardon ask, that now I use thee in my latter task. Small loss it is that thence can come unto thee. I know my tongue but little grace can do thee. Thou needst not be ambitious to be first. Believe me, I have thither packed the worst, and if it happen as I did forecast, the daintiest dishes shall be served up last. I pray thee then deny me not thy aid, for this same small neglect that I have made. But haste thee straight to do me once a pleasure, and from thy wardrobe bring thy chiefest treasure. Not those newfangled toys and trimmings slight, which takes our late fantastics with delight, but cull those richest robes and gayest attire, which deepest spirits and choicest wits desire. I have some naked thoughts that rove about, and loudly knock to have their passage out, and weary of their place do only stay till thou hast decked them in thy best array, that so they may without suspect or fears fly swiftly to this fair assembly's ears. Yet I had rather, if I were to choose, thy service in some graver subject use, such as may make thee search thy coffers round, before thou clothe my fancy in fit sound, such where the deep transported mind may soar above the wheeling poles and at heaven's door. Look in and see each blissful deity, how he before the thunderous throne doth lie, listening to what unshorn Apollo sings, to the touch of golden wires, while Hebe brings immortal nectar to her kingly sire. Then passing through the spheres of watchful fire and misty regions of wide air next under, and hills of snow and lofts of piled thunder, may tell at length how green-eyed Neptune raves, in heaven's defiance mustering all his waves, then sing of secret things that came to pass when beldam nature in her cradle was. And last of kings and queens and heroes old, such as the wise Demodocus once told, in solemn songs at King Alcina's feast, while sad Ulysses' soul and all the rest are held with his melodious harmony, in willing chains and sweet captivity. But fie, my wandering muse, how dost thou stray? Expectance calls thee now another way. Thou knowest it must be now thy only bent to keep in compass of thy predicament. Then quick about thy purposed business come, that to the next I may resign my room. Good luck befriend thee, son, for at thy birth the fairy ladies danced upon the hearth. Thy drowsy nurse hath sworn she did them spy, come tripping to the room where thou didst lie, and sweetly singing round about thy bed, strew all their blessings on thy sleeping head. She heard them give thee this, that thou shouldst still from eyes of mortals walk invisible. Yet there is something that doth force my fear, for once it was my dismal hap to hear a sibyl old, bow bent with crooked age, that far events full wisely could presage, and in times long and dark prospective glass foresaw what future days should bring to pass. Your son, said she, nor can you it prevent, shall subject be to many an accident. O'er all his brethren he shall reign as king, and every one shall make him underling. And those that cannot live from him asunder, ungratefully shall strive to keep him under. In worth and excellence he shall outgo them, yet being above them he shall be below them. From others he shall stand in need of nothing, yet on his brothers shall depend for clothing. To find a foe it shall not be his hap, and peace shall lull him in her flowery lap. Yet shall he live in strife, and at his door devouring war shall never cease to roar. Yea, it shall be his natural property to harbor those that are at enmity. What power, what force, what mighty spell, if not, your learned hands can loose this gorgon knot? Rivers arise, whether thou be the son of utmost Tweed, or Ouse, or Gulfy Dun, or Trent, who like some earth-born giant spreads his 30 arms along the indented meads, or sullen mole that runneth underneath, or Severn Swift guilty of maiden's death, or rocky Avon, or sedgy Lee, or Coley Tyne, or ancient hallowed Dee, or Humber Loud that keeps the Scythian's name, or Medway Smooth, or Royal Tower Tame.
This is a poem on Thomas Hobson, the university courier and postmaster, who is buried here in St Benet's Church. On the university carrier, who sickened in the time of his vacancy, being forbid to go to London by reason of the plague. Here lies old Hobson. Death hath broke his girt, and here, alas, hath laid him in the dirt. Or else the ways being foul, 20 to 1, he's here stuck in a slough and overthrown. 'Twas such a shifter that if truth were known, Death was half glad when he had got him down, for he had any time this 10 years full dodged with him betwixt Cambridge and the Bull. And surely death could never have prevailed, had not his weekly course of carriage failed. But lately finding him so long at home, and thinking now his journey's end was come, that he had taken up his latest inn, in the kind office of a chamberlain, showed him his room where he must lodge that night, pulled off his boots, and took away the light. If any ask for him, it shall be said, Hobson has supped, and's newly gone to bed.
Next up is On the Morning of Christ's Nativity.
This is the month, and this the happy morn, wherein the Son of Heaven's eternal King, of wedded maid and virgin mother born, our great redemption from above did bring. For so the holy sages once did sing, that he our deadly forfeit should release, and with his Father work us a perpetual peace. That glorious form, that light unsufferable, and that far-beaming blaze of majesty, wherewith he wont at heaven's high council table to sit the midst of trinal unity, he laid aside, and here with us to be, forsook the courts of everlasting day, and chose with us a darksome house of mortal clay. Say, heavenly muse, shall not thy sacred vein afford a present to the infant God? Hast thou no verse, no hymn or solemn strain to welcome him to this his new abode? Now while the heaven by the sun's team untrod hath took no print of the approaching light, and all the spangled host keep watch in squadrons bright, see how from afar upon the eastern road the star-led wizards haste with odours sweet. O run, prevent them with thy humble ode, and lay it lowly at his blessed feet. Hast thou the honour first thy Lord to greet, and join thy voice unto the angel choir from out his secret altar touched with hallowed fire?
It was the winter wild, while the heaven-born child, all meanly wrapped in the rude manger lies, nature and all to him had doffed her gaudy trim, with her great master so to sympathize. It was no season then for her to wanton with the sun, her lusty paramour. Wanly with the speeches fair, she woos the gentle air to hide her guilty front with innocent snow, and on her naked shame pollute with sinful blame. The saintly veil of maiden white to throw, confounded that her maker's eyes should look so near upon her foul deformities. But he her fears to cease, sent down the meek-eyed peace. She crowned with the olive green came softly sliding down through the turning sphere, his ready harbinger, with turtle wing the amorous clouds dividing, and then waving her myrtle wand, she strikes a universal peace through sea and land. No war or battle sound was heard the world around. The idle spear and shield were high up hung. The hooked chariot stood unsustained with hostile blood. The trumpet spake not to the armed throng, and kings sate with awful eye, as if they surely knew their sovereign lord was by. But peace was the night, wherein the Prince of Light his reign of peace upon the earth began. Smoothly the winds with wonder whisked, smoothly the waters kissed, whispering new joys to the mild ocean, who now hath quite forgot to rave, while the birds of calm sat brooding on the charmed wave. The stars with deep amaze stand fixed in steadfast gaze, bending one way their precious influence, and will not take their flight for all the morning light, or Lucifer that often warned them thence, but in their glimmering orbs did glow, until their Lord himself bespake and bid them go.
And though the shady gloom had given day her room, The sun himself withheld his wonted speed, and hid his head for shame, as his inferior flame the new enlightened world no more should need. He saw a greater sun appear than his bright throne or burning axle tree could bear. The shepherds on the lawn, or ere the point of dawn, sate simply chatting in a rustic row. Full little thought they then that the mighty Pan was kindly come to live with them below. Perhaps their loves, or else their sheep, was all that did their silly thoughts so busy keep. When such music sweet their hearts and ears did greet, as never was by mortal finger struck, divinely warbled voice, answering the stringed noise, as all their souls in blissful rapture took. The air such pleasure loth to lose, with thousand echoes still prolongs each heavenly close. Nature that heard such sound beneath the hollow round of Cynthia's seat, the airy region thrilling, now was almost won, to think her part was done, and that her reign had here its last fulfilling. She knew such harmony alone could hold all heaven and earth in happier union. At last surrounds their sight a globe of circular light, that with long beams the shamed fat night arrayed. The helmed cherubim and sworded seraphim are seen in glittering ranks with wings displayed, harping in loud and solemn choir with expressive notes to heaven's newborn heir. Such music, as 'tis said, before was never made, but when of old the sons of morning sung, while the Creator great his constellations set, and the well-balanced world on hinges hung, and cast the dark foundations deep, and bid the weltering waves their oozy channel keep. Ring out, ye crystal spheres, once bless our human ears, if ye have power to touch our senses so, and let your silver chime move in melodious time, and let the bass of heaven's deep organ blow, and with your ninefold harmony make up full consort to thy angelic symphony.
For if such holy song enwrap our fancy long, time will run back and fetch the age of gold, and speckled vanity will sicken soon and die, and leprous sin will melt from earthly mould, and hell itself will pass away, and leave her dolorous mansions to the peering day. Yea, truth and justice then will down return to men, the enamelled arras of the rainbow wearing, and mercy set between, throned in celestial sheen. With radiant feet the tissued clouds stand steering, and heaven, as at some festival, will open wide the gates of her high palace hall. But wisest fate says no, this must not yet be so. The babe lies yet in smiling infancy, that on the bitter cross must redeem our loss. So both himself and us to glorify, yet first to those he chained in sleep, the wakeful trump of doom must thunder through the deep. With such a horrid clang as on Mount Sinai rang, while the red fire and smouldering clouds outbreak, the aged earth aghast with terror of that blast shall from the surface to the centre shake, when at the world's last session the dreadful judge in middle air shall spread his throne. And then at last our bliss, full and perfect is, for now begins. For from this happy day, the old dragon underground, in straighter limits bound, not half so far cast his usurped sway, and wrath to see his kingdom fall, swinges the scaly horror of his folded tail. The oracles are dumb, no voice or hideous hum runs through the arched roof in words deceiving. Apollo from his shrine can no more divine with hollow shriek the steep of Delphos leaving. No nightly trance or breathed spell inspires the pale-eyed priest from the prophetic cell.
The lonely mountain's awe and the resounding shore
a voice of weeping heard and loud lament, from haunted spring and dale, edged with poplar pale. The parting genius is with sighing sent, with flowered inwoven tresses torn, the nymphs in twilight shade of tangled thickets mourn. In consecrated earth and on the holy hearth, the lars and lemurs moan with midnight plaint. In urns and altars round, a drear and dying sound affrights the flemings at their surface quaint, and the chill marble seems to sweat, while each peculiar power forgoes his wonted seat. Peor and Baalim forsake their temples dim, with that twice battered god of Palestine, and moon Ashtaroth, heaven's queen and mother both, now sits not girt with tapers' holy shine. The libet Hammond shrieks his horn. In vain the Tyrian maids their wounded Thamos mourn. And sullen Moloch fled, hath left in shadows dread his burning idol all of blackest hue. In vain with cymbals ring they call the grisly king in dismal dance about the furnace blue. The brutish gods of Nihilus fast, Isis and Oris and the dog Anubis hast, nor is Osiris seen in Memphian grove or green, trampling the unshowered grass with lowings loud, nor can he be at rest within his sacred chest. Naught but profoundest hell can be his shroud. In vain, with timbrelled anthems dark, the sable-stoled sorcerers bear his worshipped ark. He feels from Judah's land the dreaded infant's hand. The rays of Bethlehem blind his dusky eyne, nor all the gods beside longer dare abide, nor Typhon huge in ending in snaky twine. Our babe, to shew his godhead true, can in his swaddling bands control the damned crew.
So when the sun in bed, curtained with cloudy red, pillows his chin upon an orient wave, the flocking shadows pale troop to the infernal jail, each fettered ghost slips to his several grave, and the yellow-skirted fays fly after the night steeds, leaving their moon-loved maze. But see, the Virgin blessed hath laid her babe to rest. Time is our tedious song should here have ending. Heaven's youngest teamed star has fixed her polished car, her sleeping lord with handmaid lamp attending, and all about the courtly stable, bright harnessed angels sit in order serviceable.
The next up is Epitaphium.
That's me.
Oh.
Oh, or maybe it's not.
No, it's not. Sorry. Oh, it might be me as well. Ed Partrem to his father. Nunc mea Pierios cupiam per pectora fontes irrigua turquere vias, tutunque per ora movere laxatum gemino de vetice vivum, ut tenues oblita sonos audacibus alis, surgat in officium venerandi musa parentis. Now I wish that the Pierian fountains might pour their inspiring waters through my breast, and the stream that flows from the twin peaks roll all its flood upon my lips, so that my muse, unmindful of her trivial strains, might rise on adventurous wing to do honor to my revered father. I know not, dearest father, how this trifling song that I am meditating will please you. Yet I know not what offerings from me can better repay your gifts, though not even the greatest can repay them, nor can any gratitude expressed by the vain return of empty words be equal to the obligation. Nevertheless, this page displays my resources, and all my wealth is set forth on this paper. But I have nothing save what golden Clio has given me, what dreams have brought me in the distant caves of sleep, and what the laurel copses of the sacred wood and the shades of Parnassus bestowed. Scorn not the poet's song, a work divine, which more than anything else reveals our ethereal origin and heavenly race. Nothing so dignifies the human mind as its origin, and it possesses yet some sacred traces of Promethean fire. The gods love song, song that has power to move the trembling depths of Tartarus, to bind the nether gods and restrain the cruel shades with triple adamant. The priestesses of Apollo and the pale trembling Sibyl disclose in song the secrets of the distant future. The sacrificing priest composes verses before the vestal altars, whether he slays the bulls that tosses its gilded horns, or sagely consults the destinies hidden in the reeking flesh, and reads fate in the entrails still warm with life. Yet I too return to my native Olympus, and when the changeless ages of eternity stretch forever before me, I shall go through the temples of heaven crowned with gold, accompanying my sweet songs with the gentle beat of the plectrum, wherewith the stars in the arch of heaven shall resound. Even now, that fiery spirit himself, who encircles a swift orb, sings with the starry choirs in an immortal melody, an ineffable song, while the glittering serpent checks his angry hissing, and fierce Orion with lowered sword grows gentle, and Marusian Atlas no longer feels the burden of the stars. Poems were wont to grace the banquets of kings, when as yet luxury and the bottomless pit of gluttony were unknown, when at dinner Lairs flowed in moderation, when according to custom the bard, seated at the festal board, his unshorn locks wreathed with a garland from the oak, used to sing the feats of heroes and their emulable deeds, sang of chaos and the broadly laid foundations of the world, of the creeping gods that fed upon acorns, and of the thunderbolt not yet brought from the cavern of Aetna. And finally, what will the empty modulation of the voice avail, void of words and sense and of eloquent numbers? That song will do for the sylvan choirs, but not for Orpheus, who with songs and not with lute held back the rivers, and gave ears to the oaks, and moved the shades of the dead to tears. These praises he has from song. Do not, I pray, persist in contemning the sacred muses. Think them not vain and poor, by whose gift you yourself are skilled in setting 1,000 voices to fitting numbers, and are trained to vary the singing voice through 1,000 modulations, who by merit should be heir to the name of Arian. Now, if it has happened that I have been born a poet, why is it strange to you that we, so closely joined by the loving bond of blood, should pursue related arts and kindred ways of life? Phoebus, wishing to divide himself in two, gave some gifts to me, others to my father, and we, father and son, possess the divided God. Although you pretend to hate the gentle muses, I believe you do not hate them. For you do not bid me go, Father, where the broad way lies open, where the field of gain is easier, and where the certain hope of laying up money shines golden. Neither do you drag me to the bar, to the laws of the nation so ill observed, nor do you condemn my ears to silly clamorings. But wishing my already nurtured mind to grow more rich, you permit me in deep retreats, far from the city's uproar, to pass my pleasant leisure by the Aeonian stream, and to walk as a happy companion by Apollo's side. I pass in silence over the common kindness of a loving parent. Greater matters call me. When at your cost, dear father, I had become fluent in the tongue of Romulus, and had mastered the graces of Latin and the lofty words of the magnificent Greeks, when became the lips of Jove himself. You then persuaded me to add to these the flowers that Gallia boasts, and the language which the modern Italian pours from his degenerate mouth, a witness by his speech of the barbarian tumult, and the mysteries which the prophet of Palestine utters. Finally, whatever is contained in the heavens, in Mother Earth beneath, and in the air that flows between the earth and heaven, whatever is hidden by the waves and the restless surface of the sea, this through your kindness I may learn, through your means, if I care to learn. From the parted clouds appears science, and naked bends her lovely faces to my kisses, unless I wish to flee, and if it be not dangerous to taste. Go now, gather wealth, fool, whoever you are, that prefer the ancient treasures of Austria and of the Peruvian realms. But what more than learning could my father have given, or Jove himself had he given all but heaven? He who committed to his young son the common lights, the chariot of Hyperion, the rains of day, the tiara radiant with life, gave not more potent gifts, even had they been saved. Therefore, since I am one through the humblest of the learned company, I shall sit among the victor's ivy and laurels, and no longer obscurely mingle with the dull rabble. My footsteps will avoid the gaze of profane eyes. Away, sleepless cares, away complaints, and the wry glance of envy with sidelong goatish leer. Fierce calumny, open not your serpent's jaws. O most detestable band, you can cause me no unhappiness. I am not under your law. Safe may I walk, my breast secure, high above your viper stroke. But as for you, dear father, since it is not granted me to make a just return for your deserts, nor to recompense your gifts with my deeds, let it suffice that I remember, and with gratitude count over your repeated gifts, and treasure them in a faithful mind. You too, my youthful verses, my pastime, if only you dare hope for endless years, dare think to survive your master's pyre and look upon the light. And if dark oblivion does not drag you down to crowded Orcus, perchance you will treasure these praises, and a father's name rehearsed in song as an example to a distant age.
The next up is On Shakespeare. What needs my Shakespeare for his honored bones, the labor of an age in piled stones, or that his hallowed relics should be hid under a star-pointing pyramid? Dear son of memory, great heir of fame, what needst thou such weak witness of thy name? Though in our wonder and astonishment hast built thyself a lifelong monument. For whilst to the shame of slow endeavouring art, thy easy numbers flow, and that each heart hath from the leaves of thy unvalued book those delphic lines which deep impression took, then though our fancy of it self-bereaving, dost make us marvel with too much conceiving, and so, sepultured in such pomp dost lie, that kings for such a tomb would wish to die. The next up is at a solemn music.
Air of silence, pledges of heaven's joy, sphere-born, harmonious sisters, voice and verse, wed your divine sounds, and mixed power employ dead things with inbreed sense able to pierce, and to a high-raised fantasy present that undisturbed song of pure consent. I, sung before the sapphire-coloured throne, to him that sits thereon, with saintly shout. Blessed pair of sirens, pledges of heaven's joy, sphere-born, harmonious sisters, voice and verse, wed your divine sounds, and mixed power employ dead things with inbreed sense able to pierce, and to a high-raised fantasy present that undisturbed song of pure consent. I, sung before the sapphire-coloured throne, to him that sits thereon, with saintly shout and solemn jubilee, where the bright seraphim in burning row their loud uplifted angel trumpets blow, and the cherubic host in thousand choirs touch their immortal harps of golden wires with those just spirits that wear victorious palms, hymns devout and holy psalms, singing everlastingly, that we on earth with undiscording voice may rightly answer that melodious noise, as once we did, till disproportioned sin jarred against nature's chime, and with harsh din broke the fair music that all creatures made to their great Lord, whose love their motion swayed in perfect diapason, whilst they stood in first obedience and their state of good. Oh, may we soon again renew that song, and keep in tune with heaven, till God ere long to his celestial consort us unite, to live with him and sing in endless morn of light.
Fly, envious time, till thou run out thy race. Call on the lazy, leaden stepping hours, whose speed is but the heavy plummet's pace, and glut thyself with what thy womb devours, which is no more than what is false and vain, a merely mortal dross. So little is our loss, so little is thy gain. For when, as each thing bad thou hast entombed, and last of all thy greedy self consumed, then long eternity shall greet our bliss with an individual kiss, and joy shall overtake us a flood when everything that is sincerely good and perfectly divine, with truth and peace and love, shall ever shine about the supreme throne of him, to whose happy making sight alone, when once our heavenly guided soul shall climb, then all this earthly grossness quit, attired with stars, we shall forever sit, triumphing over death and chance and thee, O time.
The next up is Sonnet 1.
O nightingale, that on yon bloomy spray warblest at eve, when all the woods are still, thou with fresh hope the lover's heart dost fill, while the jolly hours lead on propitious May. Thy liquid notes that close the eye of day, first heard before the shallow cuckoo's bill, portend success in love. Oh, if Jove's will have linked that amorous power to thy soft lay. Now timely sing, ere the rude bird of hate foretell my hopeless doom in some grove nigh, as thou from year to year hast sung too late. For my relief, yet hast no reason why, whether the muse or love call thee his mate, both them I serve, and of their train am I.
How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23 year? My hasting days file on with full career, but my late spring no bud or blossom showeth. Perhaps my semblance might deceive the truth, that I to manhood am arrived so near, and inward ripeness doth much less appear, that some more timely happy spirits induce. Yet, be it less or more, or soon or slow, it shall be still in strictest measure even, to that same lot, however mean or high, toward which time leads me, and the will of heaven. All is, if I have grace to use it so, as ever in my great taskmaster's eye.
The next up is L'Allegro.
L'Allegro. Hence, loathed melancholy of Cerberus and blackest midnight born, in Stygian cave forlorn, mongst horrid shapes and shrieks and sights unholy, find out some uncouth cell where brooding darkness spreads his jealous wings, and the night raven sings. There, upon ebon shades and low-browed rocks, as ragged as thy locks, in dark Cimmerian desert ever dwell. But come, thou goddess fair and free, in heaven uncleaped youth's Phorcine, and by men art easing mirth, whom lovely Venus at a birth with 2 sisters graces more to ivy-crowned Bacchus bore. Or whether, as some sages sing, the frolic wind that breathes the spring, Zephyr with Aurora playing, as he met her once a-maying. There on bed of violets blue and fresh-grown roses washed in dew, filled her with thee a daughter fair, so buxom, blithe, and debonair, hath the nymph, and bring thee, jest and joyful jollity, quips and cranks and wanton wiles, nods and becks and wreathed smiles, such as hang on Hebe's cheek and love to live in dimple sleep. Sport that wrinkled care derides, and laughter holding both his sides. Come and trip it as ye go on the light fantastic toe, and in thy right hand lead with thee the mountain nymph, sweet Liberty. And if I give thee honour due, mirth admit of thee thy crew, to live with her and live with thee in unreproved pleasures free. To hear the lark begin his flight, and singing startle the dull night from his watchtower in the skies, till the dappled damp doth rise. Then to come in sprite of sorrow, and at my window bid good morrow, through the sweet briar or the vine, or the twisted eglantine, while the cock with lively din scatters a rear of darkness thin, and to the stack or the barn door stoutly struts his dames before, oft listening how the hounds and horn clearly rouse a slumbering morn from the side of some hoar hill, through the high wood echoing shrill. Sometime walking not unseen by hedgerow elms, on hillocks green, right against the eastern gate, where the great sun begins his state, robed in flames and amber light, the clouds in thousand liveries dight. While the ploughman near at hand whistles o'er the furrowed land, and the milkmaid singeth blithe, and the mower whets his scythe, and every shepherd tells his tale under the hawthorn in the dale. Straight mine eye hath caught new pleasures, whilst the landscape round it measures, russet lawns and fallows grey, where the nibbling flocks do stray, mountains on whose barren breast the labouring clouds do often rest, meadows trim with daisies pied, shallow brooks and rivers wide, towers and battlements it sees, bosomed high in tufted trees, where perhaps some beauty lies, the sinecure of neighbouring eyes. Hard by a cottage chimney smokes, from twixt two aged oaks, where Corydon and Thyrsis met, are at their savoury dinner set of harbs and other country messes, which the new-handed Phyllis dresses, and then in haste her bower she leaves, with Thestilis to bind the sheaves, or if the earlier season lead to the tanned haydock in the mead, sometimes with secure delight the upland hamlets will invite, when the merry bells ring round and the jocund rebecks sound, to many a youth and many a maid dancing in the checkered shade. And young and old come forth to play on a sunshine holy day, till the live long daylight fail, to the spicy nut brown ale, with stories told of many a feat, how fairy Mabe the junkets heat. She was pinched and pulled, she said, and he by Friar Lanthorn led, tells how the druggling goblin sweat to earn his cream bowly duly set, when in one night, a glimpse of morn, his shadowed flail hath threshed the corn, that 10-day labourers could not end, then lies down the lubber fend, and stretched out all the chimney's length, bask at the fire his hairy strength, and crop full out of doors he flings, ere the first cock his matin rings. Thus dons the tale, to bed they creep, by whispering winds soon lulled asleep. Towered cities please us then, and then the buzzed hum of men, where throngs of knights and barons bold in weeds of peace high triumphs hold, with store of ladies whose bright eries reign influence and judge the price of wit or arms, while both contend to win her grace whom all commend. There let Hymen oft appear, in saffron road with taper clear, with pomp and feast and revelry, with mask and antique pageantry, such sights as youthful poets dream on summer eves by haunted street. Then to the well-trod stage anon, if Johnson's learned as Sockby on, or sweet as Shakespeare, Fancy's child, warble his native wood notes wild, and ever against eating cares lap me in soft Lydian airs, married to immortal verse, such as a meeting soul may pierce in note with many a minding bout of linked sweetness long drawn out, with wanton heed and giddy cunning, the melting voice through mazes running. untwisted all the chains they tied, the hidden soul of harmony, that Orpheus' self may heave his head from golden slumber on a bed of heaped Elysian flowers, and hear such strains as would have won the ear of Pluto to have quite set free his half-regained Eurydice. These delights, if thou canst give, mirth with thee I mean to live.
The next up is Il Penseroso.
Hence vain deluding joys, the brood of folly without father bred. How little you bested, or fill the mixed mind with all your toys. Dwell in some idle brain, and fancies fond with gaudy shapes possess, as sick and numberless as the gay motes that people the sun beams, or like as hovering dreams, the fickle pensioners of Morpheus' train. But hail thou, goddess, sage and holy, hail, divinest melancholy, whose saintly visage is too bright to hit the sense of human sight, and therefore to our weaker view are laid with black stayed wisdom's hue. Black, but such as in esteem Prince Memnon's sister might be seen, or that starred Ethiop queen that strove to set her beauty's praise above the sea nymphs and their powers offended. Yet thou art higher far descended, thee bright head vested long of yore, to solitary Saturn bore. His daughter she, in Saturn's reign, such mixture was not held a stain. Oft in glimmering bars and glades he met her, and in secret shades of woody Ida's inmost grave. And yet there was no fear of Jove. Come, pensive nun, devout and pure, sober, steadfast, and demure, all in a robe of darkest grain, flowing with majestic train, and sable stole of cypress lawn, o'er thy decent shoulders drawn. Come, but keep thy wonted state, with even step and musing gait, and looks conversing with the skies, thy rapt soul sitting in thine eyes. They're held in holy passion still. Forget thyself to marble, till with a sad leaden downward cast, thou fix them on the earth as fast, and join with thee calm peace and quiet, spare fast, that oft with gods doth diet, and hears the muses in a ring, I round about Jove's altar sing.
Add to these retired leisure, that in trim gardens takes his pleasure. But first and chiefest, with thee bring him that yon soars on golden wing, guiding the fiery wheelie throne, the cherub contemplation. And the mute silence hissed along, lest Philomel will deign a song in her sweetest, saddest plight, smoothing the rugged brow of night, while Cynthia checks her dragon yoke, gently o'er the accustomed oak. Sweet bird, that shuns the noise of folly, most musical, most melancholy, the enchantress of the woods among, I woo to hear thy even song, and, missing thee, I walk unseen on the dry, smooth-shaven green, to behold the wandering moon riding near her highest noon, like one that had been led astray through the heaven's wide pathless way, and oft as if her head she bowed, stooping through a fleecy cloud. Often applied of rising ground, I hear the far-off curfew sound, or some wide-watered shore, swinging along with sullen roar. Or if the air will not permit, some still removed place will fit, where glowing embers through the room teach light to counterfeit the gloom. Far from all resort of mirth, save the crickets on the earth, or the bellman's drowsy charm to bless the doors from nightly harm. Or let my lamp at midnight hour be seen in some high lonely tower, where I may oft outwatch the bear with thrice great Hermes, or as fear the spirit of Plato, to unfold what worlds or what vast regions hold the immortal mind that hath forsook her mansion in this fleshly nook, and of those demons that are found in fire, air, flood, or underground, whose power hath a true consent with planet or with element.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Lara.
I'm changing my microphone. Sometime let gorgeous tragedy in sceptred pall come sweeping by, presenting Thebes or Pelops' line, or the tale of Troy divine, or what, though rare at later stage, ennobled hath the buskined stage. But, O sad virgin, that thy power might raise Musaeus from his bower, or bid the soul of Orpheus sing such notes as warbled to the string, drew iron tears down Pluto's cheek, and made hell grant what love did seek. Or call him that left half told the story of Cambuscan bold, or of Campbell, or of Albersythe, who had Canace to wife, that owned the virtuous ring and glass, and of the wondrous horse of brass, on which the Tartar king did ride. And if all else, great bards beside in sage and solemn tunes have sung, of tourneys and of trophies hung, of forests and enchantments drear, where more is meant than meets the ear. Thus night oft seems me in pale career, till Sybil-suited morn appear, not tricked and frounced as she was wont, with the Attic boy to hunt, but churched in a comely cloud, while rocket winds are piping loud, or ushered with a shower still, when the gust has blown his fill, ending on the rustling leaves with minute drops from off the eaves. And when the sun begins to fling his flaring beams, me goddess brings to arched walls of twilight groves, and shadows brown that sylvan logs of pine or monumental oak, with a rude axe with heaved stroke was never heard the nymphs to daunt, or fright them from their hallowed haunt.
Sorry, Andrea, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. There in close covert by some brook, where no profane eye may look, hide me from day's garish eye, while the bee with honeyed thigh, that at her flowery work doth sing, and the waters murmuring with such consort as they keep, entice the dewy feathered sleep, and let some strange mysterious dream wave at his wings an airy stream of lively portraiture displayed softly on my eyelids lay. And as I wake, sweet music breathe above, about, or underneath, sent by some spirit to mortals good, or the unseen genius of the wood. But let my dew feet never fail to walk the studious cloisters pale, and love the high embowed roof, with antique pillars massy proof, and storied windows richly dight, casting a dim religious light. There let the pealing organ blow to the full-voiced choir below, in service high and anthems clear, as may with sweetness through mine ear dissolve me into ecstasies, and bring all heaven before mine eyes. I may at last my weary age find out the peaceful hermitage, the hairy gown and mossy cell, where I may sit and rightly spell of every star that heaven doth show, and every herb that sips the dew, till old experience do attain to something like prophetic strain. These pleasures melancholy give, and I with thee will choose to live.
The next up is Arcades.
Arcades.
Look, nymphs and shepherds, look, what sudden blaze of majesty in that which we from hence decree, too divine to be mistook. This is she, to whom our vows and wishes bend. Here our solemn search hath end. Fame that her high worth to raise seemed erst so lavish and profuse, we may justly now accuse of detraction from her praise. Less than half we find expressed, envy bid conceal the rest. Mark what radiant state she spreads, encircle round her shining throne, shooting her beams like silver threads. This is she alone, sitting like a goddess bright, in the center of her light. Might she the wise Latona be, or the towered Cybele, mother of 100 gods? Juno dares not give her odds. Who had thought this clime had held a deity so unparalleled? Stay gentle, swains, for thou in this disguise, I see bright honor sparkle through your eyes. Of famous Arcady ye are, and sprung of that renowned flood so often sung. Divine Elpheus, who by secret sluice stole under seas to meet his Arethusa. And ye, the breathing roses of the wood, fair silver buskined nymphs as great and good, I know this quest of yours and free intent was all in honor and devotion meant to the great mistress of yon princely shrine, whom with low reverence I adore as mine, and with all helpful service will comply to further this night's glad solemnity, and lead ye where ye may more near behold. What shallow searching fame hath left untold, which I full oft midst these shades alone have sat to wonder at and gaze upon. For now, by lot from Jove, I am the power of this fair wood, and live in oaked bower, to nurse the saplings tall, and curl the grove with ringlets quaint, and wanton windings wove. And all my plants I save from nightly ill, of noisome winds and blasting vapours chill. And from the boughs brush of the evil dew, and heal the harms of thwarting thunder blue. Of what the cross-dire looking planet smites, or hurtful worm with cankered venom bites. When evening grey doth rise, I fetch my round over the mount, and all this hallowed ground, and early ere the odorous breath of morn awakes the slumbering leaves or tasselled horn. Shakes the high thicket, haste I all about, number my ranks and visit every sprout, with puissant words the murmurs made to bless. But else in deep of night, when drowsiness hath locked up mortal sense, then listen I to the celestial sirens' harmony, that sit upon a 9 enfolded spheres, and sing to those that hold the vital spheres, and turn the adamantine spindle round, on which the fate of gods and men is wound. Such sweet compulsion doth the music lie, to lull the daughters of necessity, and keep unsteady nature to her law. And the low world of measured motion draw after the heavenly tune which none can hear, or human mould with gross unpurged ear. And yet such music worthiest were to blaze the peerless height of her immortal praise. whose lustre leads us, and for her most fit, in my inferior hand or voice could hit intermittable sounds, yet as we go, whate'er the skill of lesser gods can show, I will essay her worth to celebrate, and so attend ye toward her glittering state, where ye may all that are of noble stem approach and kiss her sacred vestures hem.
Oh, the smooth emerald green, where no print of step hath been. Follow me as I sing and touch the warbled string under the shady roof of branching elm star-proof. Follow me. I will bring you where she sits, clad in splendour as befits her deity, such a rural queen Arcadia hath not seen.
Nymphs and shepherds dance no more by sandy Ladon's lilied banks. On old Lycidas or Selene hoar, trip no more in twilight ranks through Erymanth your loss deplore, a better soil shall give ye thanks. From the stony Minorless bring your flocks and live with us. Here ye shall have greater grace to serve the lady of this place. Though Syrinx your Pan's mistress were, yet Syrinx well might wait on her. Such a rural queen all Arcadia hath not seen.
Comus. A Maske presented at Ludlow Castle. Ludlow Castle, 1634. Yeah, Ludlow Castle. And with low thoughted care, Comus. And with low thoughted care, confined and pestered in this pinfold here, strive to keep up a frail and feverish being, unmindful of the crown that virtue gives after this mortal change to her true servants amongst the enthroned gods on sainted seats. Yet some there be that by due steps aspire to lay their just hands on that golden key that opes the palace of eternity. To such my errand is, and but for such I would not soil these pure ambrosial weeds with the rank vapours of this sin-worn mould.
But to my task, Neptune decides the sway of every salt flood, and each ebbing stream, took in by lot twixt tide, and neither Jove, imperial rule of all the sea-girt isles, that like to rich and various gems inlay the unadorned bosom of the deep, which he, to grace his tributary gods, by course commits to several government, and gives them leave to wear their sapphire crowns, and wield their little tridents. But this isle, the greatest, and the best of all the maid, he quarters to his blue-haired deities, and all this tract that fronts the falling sun.
A noble peer of mickle trust and power has in his charge, with tempered awe, to guide an old and haughty nation proud in arms, where his fair offspring nursed in princely law are coming to attend their father's state and new entrusted sceptre. But their way lies through the perplexed paths of this drear wood. The nodding horror of those shady brows threats the forlorn and wandering passenger, and here their tender age must suffer peril. But that by quick command from sovereign Jove, I was dispatched for their defence and guard. And listen why, for I will tell you now that what never yet was heard in tale or song, from old or modern bard in hall or bower, Bacchus, that burst from out the purple grape, crushed the sweet poison of misruled used wine, after the Tuscan mariners transformed, coasting the Tyrrhene shore as the winds listed on Circe's island fell.
Who knows not Circe, the daughter of the sun, whose charmed cup whoever tasted lost his upright shape and downward fell into a grovelling swine. This nymph that gazed upon his clustering locks with ivy berries wreathed, and his blithe youth had by him, ere he parted thence, a son, much like his father, but his mother more, whom therefore she brought up and Comus named.
Who ripe and frolic of his full-grown age, roving the Celtic and Iberian fields, at last betakes him to this ominous wood, and in thick shelter of black shades, embowered, excels his mother at her mighty art, offering to every weary traveller his orient liquor in a crystal glass, to quench the drouth of Phoebus, which as they taste, foremost do taste, through fond intemperate thirst.
Soon as the potion works their human countenance, the express resemblance of the gods is changed into some brutish form of wolf, or bear, or ounce, or tiger, hog, or bearded goat, all other parts remaining as they were, and they, so perfect is their misery, not once perceive their foul disfigurement, but boast themselves more comely than before, and all their friends, and native home forget to rule with pleasure in a sensual style.
Therefore, when any favoured of high Jove chances to pass through this adventurous glade, swift as the sparkle of a glancing star, I shoot from heaven to give him safe comfort, as now I do. But first, I must put off these my sky robes spun out of iris wood, and take the reeds and likeness of swain, that to the service of this house belongs, who with his soft pipe and smooth ditted song well knows to still the wild winds when they roar, and hush the waving woods, nor of lesser faith in this office of his mountain watch, likeliest and nearest to the present aid of this occasion.
But I hear the tread of hateful steps. I must be viewless now.
I, Comus, the star that bids the shepherd fold, now top the heaven doth hold, and the gilded car of day. His glowing axle doth allay in the steep Atlantic stream, and the sloped sun his upward beam shoots across the dusty pole, pacing toward the other goal of his chamber in the east. Meanwhile, welcome, joy and feast, midnight shout and revelry, tipsy dance and jollity. Braid your locks with rosy twine, dropping odours, dropping wine. Rigour now is gone to bed, and advice with scrupulous head, strict age and sour severity with their grave sores in slumber lie. We that are of purer fire imitate the starry choir, who in their nightly watchful spheres lead in swift round the month and years, the sounds and seas with all their finny drove. Now to the moon in wavering morris mood, and on the tawny sands and shelves trip the pert fairies and the dapper elves. By dimpled brook and fountain brim, the wood nymphs decked with daisies trim, their merry wakes and pastimes keep. What hath night to do with sleep? Night hath better sweets to prove. Venus now wakes and wakens love. Come, let us our rites begin. 'Tis only daylight that makes sin, which these dun shades will ne'er report. Hail, goddess of it nocturnal sport, dark valleyed Cotito, tomb the secret flame of midnight torches burns. Mysterious dame, that ere night called, but when the dragon womb of Stygian darkness spets her thickest gloom, and makes one blot of all the air. Stay thy cloudy ebon chair, wherein thou rides with Hecate, and befriend us, thy vowed priests, till utmost end of all thy dues be done, and none left out, ere the blabbing eastern scout, the nice morn on the Indian sleep, from her cabin's loophole peep, and to the telltale sun descry our concealed solemnity. Come, knit hands and beat the ground in a light, fantastic round. Music, music, music. La, 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 la. Break off, break off. I feel the different pace of some chaste footing near above this ground.
Run to your shrouds. Within these brakes and trees our number may affright some virgin shore. For so I can distinguish by mine art. Benighted in these woods, now to my charms and to my wily trains, I shall ere long be well stocked with as fair a herd as grazed about my mother Circe. Thus I hurl my dazzling spells into the spongy air of power, to cheat the eye with blear illusion, and give it false presentiments, lest the place and my quaint habits breed astonishment, and put the damsel to suspicious flight, which must not be. For that's against my course. I, under fair pretence of friendly ends, and well-placked words of glozing courtesy, baited with reasons not implausible, wind me into the easy-hearted man, and hug him into snares. When once her eye hath met the virtue of this magic dust, I shall appear some harmless villager, whom thrift keeps up about his country gear. And here the lady comes. I fairly step aside, and hearken, if I may, her business here.
This way the noise was, if mine ear be true. My best guide now, methought it was the sound of riot and ill-managed merriment, such as the jocund flute or gamesome pipe stirs up among the loose, unlettered hinds, when for their teeming flocks and granges full in wanton dance, they praise the bounteous Pan, and thank the gods amiss. I should be loath to meet the rudeness and swilled insolence of such late wassailers. Yet, oh, where else shall I inform my unacquainted feet, in the blind mazes of this tangled wood? My brothers, when they saw me wearied out with this long way, resolving here to lodge under the spreading favour of these pines, stepped, as they said, to the next thicket side to bring me berries, or such cooling fruit as the kind hospitable woods provide. They left me then, when the grey hooded even, like a sad votarist in Palmer's weed, rose from the hindmost wheels of Phoebus' wain. But where are they? And why they came not back is now the labour of my thoughts. 'Tis likeliest they had engaged their wandering steps too far, and envious darkness, ere they could return, had stole them from me. Else, O thievish night, why shouldst thou, but for some felonious end, in thy dark lantern thus close up the stars, that nature hung in heaven, and fill their lamps with everlasting oil, to give due light to the misled and lonely traveller? This is the place, as well as I may guess, whence even now the tumult of loud mirth was rife, and perfect in my listening ear. Yet naught but single darkness do I find. What might this be? 1,000 fantasies begin to throng into my memory, of calling shapes and beckoning shadows dire, and airy tongues that syllable men's names, on sands and shores and desert wildernesses. These thoughts may startle well, but not astound the virtuous mind that ever walks attended by a strong siding champion, conscience. O welcome pure-eyed faith, white-handed hope, thou hovering angel girt with golden wings, and thou unblemished form of chastity, I see ye visibly, and now believe that he, the supreme good, to whom all things ill are but as slavish officers of vengeance, would send a glistening guardian, as need were, to keep my life and honour unassailed. Was I deceived, or did a sable cloud turn forth her silver lining on the night? I did not err. There does a sable cloud turn forth her silver lining on the night, and casts a gleam over this tufted grove. I cannot hallo to my brothers, but such noise as I can make to be heard farthest I'll venture, for my new enlivened spirits prompt me, and they perhaps are not far off.
Sweet echo, sweetest nymph that livest unseen within thy airy shell, by slow meanders margent green, and in the violet embroidered vale, where the love-lorn nightingale nightly to be her sad song mourneth well.
Canst thou not tell me of a gentle pair that likest thy Narcissus are? Or, oh, if thou have hid them in some flowery cave, tell me but where, sweet queen of parley, daughter of the sphere, so mayst thou be translated to the skies, and give resounding grace to all heaven's harmonies.
Can any mortal mixture of earth's mould breathe such divine enchanting ravishment? Sure, something holy lodges in that breast, and with these raptures moves the vocal air to testify his hidden residence. How sweetly did they float upon the wings of silence, through the emptied, vaulted night of every fall, smoothing the raven down of darkness till it smiled. I've oft heard my mother Circe with the sirens three, amidst the flowery kirtled Naiades, culling their potent herbs and baleful drugs, who, as they sung, would take the prisoned soul and lap it in Elysium. Scylla wept and chid her barking waves into attention, and fell Charybdis murmured soft applause. Yet they in pleasing slumber lulled the sense, and in sweet madness robbed it of itself. But such a sacred and home-felt delight, such sober certainty of waking bliss, I never heard it till now. I'll speak to her, and she shall be my queen. Hail, foreign wonder, whom certain these rough shades did never breed, unless the goddess that in rural shine dwells here with Pan or Sylvan, by blessed song forbidding every bleak unkindly fog to touch the prosperous growth of this tall wood.
Nay, gentle shepherd, ill is lost that praise that is addressed to unattending ears. Not any boast of skill, but extreme shift, how to regain my severed company, compelled me to awake the courteous echo, to give me answer from her mossy couch.
Well, what chance, good lady, hath bereft you thus?
Dim darkness and this heavy labyrinth.
Well, could that divide you from their ushering guide?
They left me weary on a grassy turf.
By falsehood, or discourtesy, or why?
To seek in the valley some cool, friendly spring.
And left your fair side all unguarded, lady?
They were but twain in purpose quick return.
Perhaps forestalling night prevented them.
How easy my misfortune is to hit.
Imports their loss, beside the present need.
No less than if I should my brothers loose.
Were they of manly prime or youthful bloom?
As smooth as Hebrews their unrazored lips.
Two such as I saw, what time the laboured ox in his loose traces from the furrow came, and the swink-turd hedger at his supper state, I saw them under a green mantling vine that crawls along the side of yon small hill, plucking ripe clusters from the tender shoots. Their port was more than human. As they stood, I took it for a fairy vision of some gay creatures of the element that in the colours of the rainbow live and play in the plighted clouds. I was awestruck, and as I passed, I worshipped it. If those you seek, it were a journey like path to heaven to help you find.
Gentle villager, what readiest way would bring me to that place?
Due west it rises from this shrubby point.
To find out that, good shepherd, I suppose, in such a scant allowance of starlight, would overtask the best land pilot's art, without the sure guess of well-practised feet.
I know each lane, and every alley, green, dingle or bushy dell of this wild wood, and every bosky bourne from side to side. My daily walks an ancient neighbourhood they are, and if your stray attendants be yet lodged, or shroud within these limits, I shall know ere morrow wake, or the low-roosted lark from her thatched palace rose. If otherwise, I can conduct you, lady, to a low but loyal cottage, where you may be safe till further quest.
Shepherd, I take thy word and trust thy honest offered courtesy, which oft is sooner found in lowly sheds with smoky rafters, than in tapestry halls and courts of princes where it first was named, and yet is most pretended. In a place less warranted than this, or less secure I cannot be, that I should fear to change it. I me bless Providence, and square my trial to my proportioned strength. Shepherd, lead on.
I, the older brother, say, unmuffle you faint stars, and thou fair moon that wantest to love travailer's benison, stoop thy pale visage through an amber cloud, and disinherit chaos that reigns here in double night of darkness and of shades. Or if your influence be quite dammed up with black usurping mists, some gentle taper through a rush handle from the wicker hole of some clay habitation visit us with thy long level rule of streaming light, and thou shalt be our star of Arcady, or Tyrian cynosure.
And I, the younger, say, if our eyes be barred that happiness, might we but hear the folded flocks penned in their wattled coats, or sound the pastoral reed with oaten stops, or whistle from the lodge, or village cock count the night watches to his feathery dames, 'twould be some solace yet, some little cheering in this close dungeon of innumerous boughs. But oh, that hapless virgin, our lost sister, where may she wander now? Whether betake her from the chill dew amongst rude burrs and thistles? Perhaps some cold bank is her bolster now, or gainst the rugged bark of some broad elm leans her unpillowed head, fraught with sad fears. What if wild amazement and affright, or while we speak within the direful grasp of savage hunger, or of savage heat?
Peace, brother, be not over exquisite to cast the fashion of uncertain evils. Grant they be so, while they rest unknown, what need a man forestall his date of grief, and run to meet what he would most avoid? Or if they be false alarms of fear, how bitter is such self-delusion? I do not think my sister so to seek, or so unprincipledly virtue's book, and the sweet peace that goodness bosoms over, as that the single want of light and noise, being in danger, as I trust she is not, could stir the constant mood of her calm thoughts, and put them into misbecoming plight. Virtue could see to do what virtue would by her own radiant light, whose sun and moon were in the flat sea sunk, and wisdom's self oft seeks the sweet retired solitude, where with her best nurse contemplation she plumes her feathers and lets grow her wings, that in the various bustle of resort were all too ruffled, and sometimes impaired. He that has light within his own clear breast may sit in the centre and enjoy bright day, but he that hides dark soul and foul thoughts, benighted walks under the midday sun, himself is his own dungeon.
'Tis most true that musing meditation most affects the pensive secrecy of a desert cell, far from the cheerful haunt of men and herds, and sits as safe as in a senate house. For who would rob a hermit of his weeds, his few books, or his beads, or maple dish, or do his grey hairs any violence? But beauty, like the fair Hesperian tree, laden with blooming gold, had need the guard of dragon watch with unenchanted eye, to save her blossoms and defend her fruit from the rash hand of bold incontinence. You may as well spread out the unsunned heaps of miser's treasure by an outlaw's den, and tell me it is safe, as bid me hope. Danger will wink on opportunity, and let a single helpless maiden pass uninjured in this wild surrounding waste. Of night or loneliness it recks me not. I fear the dread events that dog them both, lest some ill-greeting touch attempt the person of our unknown sister.
I do not, brother, infer, as if I thought my sister's state secure without all doubt or controversy. Yet where an equal poise of hope and fear does arbitrate the event, my nature is that I incline to hope rather than fear, and gladly banish swift suspicion. My sister is not so defenceless left as you imagine. She has not a hidden strength, which you remember not.
What hidden strength? Unless the strength of heaven, if you mean that.
I mean that too, but yet a hidden strength, which if heaven gave it, may be terming her own. 'Tis chastity, my brother, chastity. She that has that is clad in complete steel, and like a quivered nymph and arrow keen may trace huge forests and unharboured heaths, infamous hills and sandy perilous wides, where through the sacred rays of chastity no savage, fierce bandit or mountaineer will dare soil her virgin purity. Yea, there, where very desolation dwells by grots and caverns shagged with horrid shades, she may pass on with unblenched majesty. Be it not done in pride or in presumption? Some say no evil thing, but walks by night in fog or fire, by lake or moorish fen, blue meagre hag or stubborn inlaid ghost that breaks his maverick chains at turpentine. No goblin or swart fairy of mine. A hurtful power over true virginity. Do you believe me yet, or shall I call antiquity from the old schools of Greece to testify the arms of chastity? Hence had the huntress Dian her dread bow, her silver-shafted queen, forever chaste, wherewith she tamed the brinded lioness and spotted mountain pard. But she set naught the frivolous bolt of Cupid, gods and men, feared her stern frown, and she was queen of the woods. What was that snaky-headed Gorgon shield that wise Minerva wore, unconquered virgin, wherewith she freezed her foes to congealed stone? But rigid looks of chaste austerity, and noble grace that daren't brute violence with sudden adoration and blank awe. So dear to heaven is saintly chastity, that when a soul is found sincerely so, 1,000 liveried angels lacking, driving far off each thing of sin and guilt, and in clear dream and solemn vision tell her of things that no gross ear can hear, till oft converse with heavenly habitants, begin to cast a beam on the outward shape, the unpolluted temple of the mind, and turns it by degrees to the soul's essence, till all be made immortal. But when lust, by unchaste looks, loose gestures, foul talk, but most by lewd and lavish acts of sin, lets in defilement to the inward parts, the soul grows clotted by contagion, in bodies and in roots, till she quite loose the divine property of her first being. Such are those thick and gloomy shadows down oft-seen in charnel vaults and sepulchres, lingering and sitting by a new-made grave, as loath to leave the body that loved, and leapt itself by carnal sensuality to a degenerate and degraded state.
How charming is divine philosophy! Not harsh and crabbed as dull fools suppose, but musical, as is Apollo's lute, and a perpetual feast of nectared sweets where no crude surfeit reigns.
List, I hear some far-off hallow break the silent air.
We thought so too. What should it be?
Oh, certain either some one like us, a knight found him here, or else some neighbour woodman, or at worst, some roving robber, calling to his fellows.
Heavens keep my sister, again and near, best draw, and stand upon our guard.
I'll hallow. I'll he be friendly, he comes well. If not, defence is a good cause, and heaven will be for us. Oh, that head I should know. What are you? Speak. Come not too near. You fall on iron stakes else.
What voice is that, my young lord? Speak again.
Oh, brother, 'tis my father's shepherd, sure.
Verses, whose artful strains have often laid the accompanying brook to hear his magical, and sweetened every musgrove of the dale. How camest thou here, good swain? Have any rams slipped from the fold, or young kid lost his dam, or straggled whether the pent lock forsook? How couldst thou find this dark sequestered nook?
O my loved master's heir and his next joy, I came not here on such a trivial toy as a stray to you, or to pursue the stealth of pilfering wolf. Not all the fleecy wealth that doth enrich these downs is worth a thought to this my errand, and the care it brought. But O my virgin lady, where is she? How chance she is not in your company?
To tell thee sadly, shepherd, without blame, or our neglect, we lost her as we came.
Ay me, unhappy, then my fears are true.
What fears, good Thyrsis? Prithee, briefly shew.
I'll tell thee, 'tis not vain or fabulous, though so esteemed by shallow ignorance, what the sage poets taught by the heavenly muse, stories of old high immortal verse, of chimeras and unchanted isles and rifted rocks, whose entrance leads to hell. For such there be, but unbelief is blind within the navel of this hideous wood. Immured in cypress shades, a sorcerer dwells, of Bacchus and of Circe born, great Comus, deep skilled in all his mother's witcheries, and heir to every thirsty wanderer by sly enticement gives his baneful cup with many murmurs mixed, whose pleasing poison the visage quite transforms of him that drinks, and the inglorious likeness of a beast fixes instead, unmoulding reason's mintage, charactered in the face. This have I learnt, tending my flocks, hardly by the hilly crofts that brow this bottom glade, whence night by night he and his monstrous rout are heard to howl like stabled wolves, or tigers at their prey, being abhorred rights to equity in their obscured haunts of inmost bowers.
Yet have they many baits and guileful spells to inveigle and invite the unwary sense of them that pass unweeting by the way. This evening late by then the chewing flocks had taken their supper on the savoury herb of knot grass dew besprent, and were in fold. I sate me down to watch upon a bank with ivy canopied and interwove with flaunting honeysuckle, and began wrapped in a pleasing fit of melancholy to meditate my rural minstrelsy, till fancy had her fill, and ere a close that the wonted roar was up amidst the woods, and filled the air with barbarous dissonance, at which I ceased, and listened them a while, till an unusual stop of sudden silence gave respite to the drowsy, frighted steeds that drew the litter of close-curtained sleep.
At last, the soft and solemn breathing sound rose like a steam of rich distilled perfumes, and stole upon the air, that even silence was took ere she was aware, and wish she might deny her nature, and be never more still to be so displaced. I was all ears, and took in strains that might create a soul under the ribs of death. But oh, ere long, too well I did perceive it was the voice of my most honoured lady, your dear sister. Amazed I stood, harrowed with grief and fear, and oh, poor hapless nightingale, thought I, how sweet thou sing'st, how near the deadly snare.
Then down the lawns I ran with headlong haste through paths, and turnings often trod by day, till guided by mine ear I found the place where that damned wizard hid in sly disguise, for so by certain signs I knew, had met already, ere my best speed could prevent the aidless innocent lady, his wished prey, who gently asked if he had seen such two, supposing him some neighbour villager. Longer I durst not stay, but soon I guessed ye were the two she meant. With that I sprung into swift flight, till I had found you here, but further know I not.
Oh, night and shades! How are you joined with hell in triple knot against the unarmed weakness of one virgin alone and helpless? Is this the confidence you gave me, brother?
Yes, and keep it still. Lean on it safely. Not a period shall be unsaid for me against the threats of malice, or of sorcery, or that power which erring men call chance. This I hold firm. Virtue may be assailed, but never hurt. Surprised by unjust force, but not enthralled. Yea, even that which mischief meant most harm shall in the happy trial prove most glory. But evil on itself shall back recoil, and mix no more with goodness, when at last gathered like scum and settled to itself, it shall be in eternal restless change, self-fed and self-consumed. If this fail, the pillared firmament is rottenness, and earth's base built on stubble. But come, let's on. Against the opposing will and arm of heaven, may never this just sword be lifted up. But for that damned magician, let him be girt with all the grisly legions that troop unto the sooty bride of Acheron. Haparies and hydras, or all the monstrous forms twixt Africa and Ind. I'll find them out and force him to restore his purchase back, or drag him by the curls to a foul death, cursed as his life.
Oh, alas, good venturous youth, I love thy courage, yet and bold emprise, but here thy sword can do thee little stead. For other arms and other weapons must be those that quell the might of hellish charms. He with his bare wand can unthread thy joints and crumble all thy sinews.
Why, prithee, shepherd, how durst thou then thyself approach so near as to make this relation?
Care and utmost shifts how to secure the lady from surprisal brought to my mind a certain shepherd lad, of small regard to see to, yet well skilled in every virtuous plant and healing herb that spreads her verdant leaf to the morning ray. He loved me well, and oft would beg me sing, which when I did, he on the tender grass would sit and hearken even to ecstasy, and in requital ope his leathered script, and show me simples of 1,000 names, telling their strange and vigorous faculties. Amongst the rest a small, unsightly root, but of divine effect, he culled me out. The leaf was darkish and had freckles on it, but in another country, as he said, bore a bright golden flower, but not in this soil.
Are unknown, and like esteemed, and the dull swain treads on it daily with his clouted shoon. And yet more medicinal is it in that moly that Hermes once to wise Ulysses gave. He called it Hemony, and he gave it me, and bade me keep it as of sovereign use against all enchantments, mildew blast, or damp, or ghastly fury's apparition. I pursued it up, but little reckoning made, till now that is this extremity compelled. But now I found it true, for by this means I knew the foul enchanter, though disguised, entered the very lime twigs of his spells, and yet came off. If you have this about you, as I will give you when you go, you may boldly assault the necromancer's hall, where if he be with dauntless hardihood and brandished blade, rush on him, break his glass, and shed the luscious liquor on the ground. But cease his wand, though he and his cursed crew fierce sign of battle make, and menace high, or like the sons of Vulcan vomit smoke, yet will they soon retire if he but shrink.
Perses, lead on apace. I'll follow thee, and some good angel bear a shield before us.
A stately palace set out with all manner of deliciousness, soft music, tables spread with all dainties. I, Comus, greet the lady, set in an enchanted chair. I offer my glass, which she puts by and is about to rise. Nay, lady, sit. But if I wave this wand, your nerves are all chained up in alabaster, and you a statue, or as Daphne was, root-bound, but fled Apollo.
Fool, do not boast, thou canst not touch the freedom of my mind with all thy charms, although this corporal rind thou hast manacled, while heaven sees good.
Why are you vexed, lady? Why do you frown? Here dwell no frowns, nor anger. From these gates sorrow flies far. See, here be all the pleasures that fancy can beget on youthful thoughts, when the fresh blood grows lively, and returns brisk as the April buds in primrose season. And first behold this cordial julep here, that flames and dances in his crystal bounds, with spirits of balm and fragrant syrups mixed. Not that Nepenthes, which the wife of Thone in Egypt gave to Jove, born Helena, is of such power to stir up joy as this, to life so friendly, or so cool to thirst. Why should you be so cruel to yourself and to those dainty limbs which nature lent for gentle usage and soft delicacy? But you invert the covenants of her trust and harshly deal like an ill borrower with that which you received on other terms, scorning the unexempt condition by which all mortal frailty must subsist. Refreshment after toil, ease after pain, that have been tired all day without repast, and timely rest have wanted. But, fair virgin, this will restore all soon.
'Twill not, false traitor, 'Twill not restore the truth and honesty that thou hast banished from thy tongue with lies. Was this the cottage and the safe abode thou toldest me of? What grim aspects are these awfully-headed monsters? Mercy, guard me! Hence with thy brood enchantments, foul deceiver, hast thou betrayed my credulous innocence, with visored falsehood and base forgery. And wouldst thou seek again to trap me here, with liquorish baits to ensnare a brute? Were it to draw for Juno when she banquets, I would not taste thy treasonous offer. None but such as are good men can give good things, and that which is not good is not delicious to a well-governed and wise appetite.
Oh, foolishness of men that lend their ears to those budge doctors of the stoic fur and fetch their precepts from the cynic tub, praising the lean and sallow abstinence. Wherefore did nature power her bounties forth with such a full and unwithdrawing hand, covering the earth with odours, with fruits and flocks, thronging the seas with spawn innumerable, but all to please and sate the curious taste, and set to work millions of spinning worms that in their green shops weaved the smooth-haired silk to deck her sons, and that no corner might be vacant of her plenty. In her loins she hatched all worshipped ore and precious gems to store her children with. If all the world should in a pet of temperance feed on pulse, drink the clear stream, and nothing wear but freeze, all giver would be unthanked, would be unpraised, not half his riches known, and yet despised. And we should serve him as a grudging master, as a penurious niggard of his wealth, and live like nature's bastards, not her sons, who would be quite surcharged with her own weight and strangled with her waste fertility. The earth cumbered, and the winged air darked with plumes. The herds would over multitude their lords, the sea over refraught would swell, and the unsought diamonds would so emblaze the forehead of the deep, and so bestud with stars that they below would grow inured to light, and come at last to gaze upon the sun with shameless brows. List, lady, be not coy, be not cozened with that same bought-in name, virginity. Beauty is nature's coin, must not be hoarded, but must be current, and the good thereof consists in mutual and partaken bliss, unsavoury in the enjoyment of itself. If you let slip time like a neglected rose, it withers on the stalk with languished head. Beauty is nature's brag, and must be shown in courts, at feasts and high solemnities, where most may wonder at the workmanship. It is for homely features to keep home. They had their name hence. Coarse complexions and cheeks of sorry grain will serve to ply the sample, and to tease the housewife's wool. What need a vermeil tinctured lip for that love-darting eyes, or tresses like the morn? There was another meaning in these gifts. Think what, and be advised. You are but yet young.
I had not thought to have unlocked my lips in this unhallowed air, but that this juggler would think to charm my judgment, as mine eyes, obtruding false rules, pranked in reason's garb. I hate when vice can bolt her arguments, and virtue hath no tongue to check her pride. Impostor do not charge most innocent nature, as if she would her children should be riotous with her abundance. She, good cateress, means her provision only to the good, that live according to her sober laws, and holy dictate of spare temperance. If every just man that now pines with want had but a moderate and beseeming share of that which lewdly pampered luxury now heaps upon some few with vast excess, nature's full blessings would be well dispent in unsuperfluous even proportion, and she no whit encumbered with her store. and then the giver would be better thanked. His praise due paid for swinish gluttony, ne'er looks to heaven amidst his gorgeous feast, but with besotted base ingratitude crams and blasphemes his feeder. Shall I go on, or have I said enough? To him that dares arm his profane tongue with contemptuous words against the sun-clad power of chastity, fain would I something say, yet to what end? Thou hast not nor ear nor soul to apprehend the sublime notion and high mystery that must be uttered to unfold the sage and serious doctrine of virginity. And thou art worthy that thou shouldst not know more happiness than this thy present lot. Enjoy your dear wit and gay rhetoric that hath so well been taught her day's dazzling fence. Thou art not fit to hear thyself convict. Yet should I try, the uncontrolled work of this pure cause would kindle my raptured spirits to such a flame of sacred vehemence, that dumb things would be moved to sympathize, and the brute earth would lend her nerves and shake till all thy magic structures reared so high were shattered into heaps o'er thy false head.
Cha, she fables not. I feel that I do fear her words, set off by some superior power. And though not mortal, yet a cold shuddering dew dips me all o'er, as when the wrath of Jove speaks thunder, and the chains of Erebus to some of Satan's crew. I must dissemble, and try her yet more strongly. Come no more, this is mere moral babble, and direct against the canon laws of our foundation. I must not thus suffer this, yet 'tis but the less and settlings of a melancholy blood. But this will cure all straight. One sip of this will bathe the drooping spirits in delight beyond the bliss of dreams. Be wise and taste.
What? Have you let the false enchanter escape? Oh, ye mistook. Ye should have snatched his wand and bound him fast without his rod reversed and backward mutters of discovering power. We cannot free the lady that sits here in stony fetters fixed and motionless. Yet stay, be not disturbed. Now I bethink thee, some other means I have which may be used, which once of Melibæus old I learnt, the soothest shepherd that e'er piped on plains. There is a gentle nymph not far from hence, that with moist curb sways the smooth Severn stream. Sabrina is her name, a virgin pure, with whom she was the daughter of Locrine, that had the sceptre from his father Brute. The guiltless damsel lying, the mad pursuit of her enraged stepdam, Gwendolen, commended her innocence to the flood, that stayed her flight with his crisscrossing course. The water nymphs that in the bottom played held up their perded wrists and took her in, bearing her straight to aged Nereus' hall.
Who, piteous of her woes, reared her lank head and gave her to his daughters to imbathe in nectared lava strewed with asphodel. And through the porch and inlet of each sense dropped in ambrosial oils till she revived and underwent a quick immortal change, made goddess of the river. Still she retains her maiden gentleness, and oft at eve visits the herds along the twilight meadows, helping all urchin blasts and ill luck signs that the shrewd meddling elves delights to make, which she with precious violed liquors heals, for which the shepherds at their festivals carol her goodness loud in rustic lays, and throw sweet garland wreaths into her stream, pansies, pinks, and gaudy daffodils. And as the old swain said, she can unlock the clasping charm and thaw the numbing spell if she be right invoked in warbling song. For maidenhood she loves, and will be swift to aid a virgin, such as was herself, in hard besetting need. This will I try, and add the power of some adjuring verse.
Sabrina, fair, listen where thou art sitting under the glass, cool, translucent wave, in twisted braids of lilies, knitting the loose train of thy amber dropping hair. Listen, for dear honour's sake, goddess of the silver lake, Listen and say, listen and appear to us in name of great Oceanus, by the earth-shaking Neptune's mace, and Tethys' grave, majestic pace, by hoary Nereus' wrinkled look, and the Carpathian wizard's hook, by scaly Triton's winding shell, and old soothsaying Glaucus' spell.
By Leucothea's lovely hands, and her son that rules the strands, by Thetis' tinsel slippered feet, and the songs of sirens sweet, by dead Parthenope's dear tomb, and fair Ligeia's golden comb, wherewith she sits on diamond rocks, sleeking her soft alluring locks.
By all the nymphs that nightly dance upon thy streams with wily glance. Rise, rise, and heave thy rosy head from thy coral paven bed, and bridle in thy headlong way, till thou the summons answered have. Listen and say.
By the rushy fringed bank, where grows the willow and the osier dank, my sliding chariot stays, thick set with agate and the azan sheen of Turkish blue and emerald green, that in the channels strays, whilst from off the waters fleet. Thus I set my printless feet o'er the cowslip's velvet head, that bends not as I tread. Gentle swain, at thy request, I am here.
Goddess dear, we implore thy powerful hand to undo the charmed band of true virgin here distressed, through the force and through the wile of unblessed enchanter vile.
Shepherd, 'tis my office best to help ensnared chastity. Brightest lady, look on me, thus I sprinkle on thy breast drops that from my fountain pure I have kept a precious cure. Thrice upon thy finger's tip, thrice upon thy rubied lip, next this marble vellum seat, smeared with gums of glutinous heat, I touch with chaste palms moist and cold. Now the spell hath lost his hold, and I must haste ere morning hour to wait in Amphitrite's bower.
Virgin, daughter of Locrine, sprung of old Anchises' line, may thy brimmed waves for this their full tribute never miss, from 1,000 petty rills that tumble down the snowy hills. Summer drouth or singed air never scorch thy tresses fair, nor wet October's torrent flood thy molten crystal fill with mud. May thy billows roll ashore the beryl and the golden ore. May thy lofty head be crowned with many a tower and terrace round, and here and there thy banks upon with groves of myrrh and cinnamon.
Lady, while heaven lends us grace, let us fly this cursed place, lest the sorcerer us entice with some other new device. Not a waste or needless sound, till we come to holier ground. I shall be your faithful guide through this gloomy covert wide, and not many furlongs thence is your father's residence, where this night are met in state many a friend to gratulate his wished presence, and beside all the swains that there abide with jigs and will dance resort, and we shall catch them at their sport, and our sudden coming there will double all their mirth and cheer. Come, let us haste. The stars grow high, but night sits monarch yet in the mid-sky.
Back, shepherds, back, enough you'll play, till next sunshine holiday. Here be without duck or nod, other trippings to be trod, of lighter toes and such court guise, as Mercury did first devise, with the mincing dryads on the lords and on the leaves.
Noble lord and lady bright, I have brought ye new delight. Here behold so goodly grown 3 fair branches of your own. Heaven hath timely tried their youth, their faith, their patience, and their truth, and sent them here through hard assays, with a crown of deathless praise, to triumph in victorious dance o'er sensual folly and intemperance.
To the ocean now I fly, and those happy climes that lie where day never shuts his eye, up in the broad fields of the sky. There I suck the liquid air all amidst the gardens fair of Hesperus, and his daughters three that sing about the golden tree. Along the crisped shades and boughs revels the spruce, and jocund spring, the graces, and the rosy blossomed towers. Hither all their bounties bring, and that there eternal summer dwells. And west winds with musky wing about the cedared alleys fling nard and cassia's balmy smells. Iris there, with humid bow, waters the odorous banks that blow flowers of more mingled hue than her purified scarf can show, and drenches with Elysian dew. List, mortals, if your ears be true.
Beds of hyacinth and roses, where young Adonis oft reposes, waxing well of his deep wound, in slumber soft and on the ground, sadly sits the Assyrian queen, but far above in spangled sheen, celestial Cupid, her famed son advanced, holds his dear Psyche, sweet entranced.
After her wandering labours long, till three consent the gods among, make her his eternal bride, and from her fair unspotted side, two blissful twins are to be born, youth and joy. So Jove hath sworn.
But now my task is smoothly done. I can fly, or I can run quickly to the green earth's end, where the bowed welkin slow doth bend, and from thence can soar as soon to the corners of the moon.
Mortals that would follow me, love, virtue, she alone is free. She can teach you how to climb higher than the sphery chime. Or if virtue feeble were, heaven itself would stoop to her. Hey, do have a little bit. Hey, hey.
Milton's Lycidas. Yet once more, O ye laurels, and once more, ye myrtles brown, with ivy never sere, I come to pluck your berries, harsh and crude, and with forced fingers rude, shatter your leaves before the mellowing year. Bitter constraint and sad occasion dear compels me to disturb your season due. For Lycidas is dead, dead ere his prime, young Lycidas, and hath not left his peer. Who would not sing for Lycidas? He knew himself to sing and build the lofty rhyme. He must not float upon his watery bier unwept, and welter to the parching wind without the meed of some melodious tear. Begin then, sisters of the sacred well, that from beneath the seat of Jove doth spring. Begin, and somewhat loudly sweep the string. Hence with denial vain and coy excuse. So may some gentle muse with lucky words favour my destined urn, and as he passes turn and bid fair peace be to my sable shroud. For we were nursed upon the selfsame hill, fed the same flock, by fountain, shade, and rill, together both, ere the high lawns appeared under the opening eyelids of the morn. We drove afield, and both together heard what time the greyfly winds her sultry horn, battening our flocks with the fresh dews of night. Oft till the star that rose at evening bright toward heaven's descent had sloped his westering wheel. Meanwhile, the rural ditties were not mute, tempered to the oaten flute. Rough satyrs danced, and fauns with cloven heel from the glad sound would not be absent long, and old Damitas loved to hear our song. But oh, the heavy change, now thou art gone. Now thou art gone, and never must return. Thee, shepherd, thee the woods and desert caves, with wild thyme and the gadding vine o'ergrown, and all their echoes mourn. The willows and the hazel copses green shall now no more be seen, fanning their joyous leaves to thy soft lays. As killing as the canker to the rose, or taintworm to the weanling herds that graze, or frost to flowers that their gay wardrobe wear when first the white thorn blows, such, Lycidas, thy loss to shepherd's ear.
Where were ye, nymphs, when the remorseless deep closed over the head of your loved Lycidas? For neither were ye playing on the steep, where your old bards the famous Druids lie, nor on the shaggy top of Mona high, nor yet where Deva spreads her wizard stream. Ay me, I fondly dream, had ye been there, for what could that have done? What could the muse herself that Orpheus bore, the muse herself for her enchanting son, whom universal nature did lament, when by the rout that made the hideous roar, his gory visage down the stream was sent, down the swift Hebrus to the Lesbian shore. Alas, what boots it with uncessant care to tend the homely slighted shepherd's trade, and strictly meditate the thanksless muse? Were it not better done as others use, to sport with Amaryllis in the shade, or with the tangles of Neaera's hair? Fame is the spur that the clear spirit doth raise, that last infirmity of the noble mind, to scorn delights and live laborious days, but the fair guerdon when we hope to find, and think to burst out into a sudden blaze, comes the blind fury with the abhorred shears, and slits the thin-spun life. But not the praise, Phoebus replies, and touch my trembling ears. Fame is no plant that grows on mortal soil, nor in the glistering foil, set off to thy world, nor in broad rumour lies, but lives and spreads aloft by those pure eyes, and perfect witness of all judging Jove, as he pronounces lastly on each deed, of so much fame in heaven expect thy meed. O fountain of Arethusa, and thou honoured flood, smooth sliding Mincius crowned with vocal reeds, that strain I heard was of a higher mood, but now my ope proceeds and listens to the herald of the sea that came in Neptune's plea. He asked the waves and asked the felon winds, what hard mishap hath doomed this gentle swain, and questioned every gust of rugged wings that blows from off each beaked promontory. They knew not of his story, and sage Hippotades their answer brings, that not a blast was from his dungeon strayed. The air was calm, and on the level brine sleek Panoply with all her sisters played. It was that fatal and perfidious bark, built in the eclipse and rigged with curses dark, that sunk so low that sacred head of thine.
Next Camus, reverend sire, when footings low, his mantle hairy and his bonnet sad, enrolled with figures dim and on the edge, like to that sanguine flower inscribed would grow. Ah, who hath reft hope ye, my dearest pledge? Last came and last did go, the pilot of the Galilean lake. 2 massy keys he bore of metals twain, the golden ops, the iron shuts amain. He shook his mitred locks and stern the spake. How well could I have spared for thee, young swain, and know of such as for their belly's sake creep and intrude and climb into the fold. Of other care they little reckoning make, than how to scramble at the sharest feast, and shove away the worthy bidden pest. Lying mouths that scarce themselves know how to hold a sheep hook, or have learned aught else the least, that to the faithful herdsman's art belongs. What recks it them, what need they are spared. And when they lift their lean and fleshy sods, grate on their scrannel pipes of wretched straw, the hungry sheep look up and are not fed, but sworn with wind and the rank mist they draw, rot inwardly and foul contagion spread. Besides what the grim wolf with pryly paw daily devours apace, and nothing said, but that two-handed engine at the door stands ready to smite once and smite no more. Return, Albius, the dread voice is past that shrunk thy streams. Return, Sicilian muse, and call the vales, and bid them hither cast their bells, and florists of 1,000 hues. Ye valleys low, where the mild whispers use of shades, and wanton winds and cushion fruits, on whose fresh lap the sword stars barely roots. Draw hither all your quaint enamelled eyes, that on the green turf suck the honeyed showers, and purple all the ground with vernal flowers. Bring the ripe primrose that forsaken dies, the tufted croto and pale jessamine, the white pink and the pensive freckled jet, the growing violet, the musk rose, and the well-attired woodbine, with cowslips wan that hung the pensive head, and every flower that sad embroidery wears. Bid Amaranthus all his beauty shed, and daffodillies fill their cups with tears, to strew the laureate hers where Lycid lies. For so to interpose a little ease, let our frail thoughts dally with false surmise.
Ay me, whilst thee the shores and sounding seas wash far away, where thy bones are hurled, whether beyond the stormy Hebrides, where thou perhaps under the whelming tide visitest the bottom of the monstrous world, or whether thou, to our moist vows denied, sleeps by the fable of Bellerus old, where the great vision of the guarded mount looks towards Namancos and by Aena's hold. Look homeward, angel, now, and melt with ruth, and, O ye dolphins, waft the hapless youth. Weep no more, woeful shepherds, weep no more, for Lycidas, your sorrow, is not dead, sunk though he be beneath the watery floor. So sinks the day star in the ocean bed, and yet anon repairs his drooping head, and tricks his beams, and with new spangled ore flames in the forehead of the morning sky. So Lycidas, sunk low, but mounted high through the dear might of him that walked the waves, where other groves and other streams along with nectar pure his oozy locks he laves, and hears the unexpressive nuptial song in the blessed kingdoms meek of joy and love. There entertain him all the saints above in solemn troops and sweet societies that sing, and singing in their glory move and wipe the tears forever from his eyes. Now, Lycidas, the shepherds weep no more. Henceforth thou art the genius of the shore in thy large recompense, and shalt be good to all that wander in that perilous flood. Thus sang the uncouth swain to the oaks and rills, while the still morn went out with sandals grey. He touched the tender stops of various quills, with eager thought warbling his Doric lay. And now the sun had stretched out all the hills, and now was dropped into the western bay. At last he rose and twitched his mantle blue. Tomorrow to fresh woods and pastures new.
A collection of Milton's poems in English and Latin, published in 1645, also contains 6 short poems in Italian. The date of their composition is uncertain, but it is generally believed that Milton had already learnt Italian by the time of his visit to Italy in 1638 and 39. possibly with the family of his school friend, Carlo Diodati, to whom one of the poems is addressed. While in Florence, he expressed his admiration for Florence in particular and Italian literature in a letter to a friend. I can often partake with eagerness and delight of the feast afforded by the great Dante, by Petrarch, and by many another of your writers. Not Attic Athens herself, with her clear stream of Ilissus, nor ancient Rome beside the Tiber, have had the power to make me lose my affection for your Arno and the hills of Fiesole, or cease to visit them with joy.
Donna leggiadra, il cui bel nome onora l'erbosa Val di Reno e il nobil varco, ben è colui d'ogni valore scarco, qual tuo spirto gentil non innamora, che dolcemente mostrasi di fuora, dei suoi atti soavi già mai parco, e i don che son d'amor saette d'arco, la donde l'alta tua virtù s'infiora. Quando tu vaga parli o lieta canti, che mover possa duro alpestre legno, guardi ciascun agli occhi e agli orecchi l'entrata chi di te si trova indegno. Gratia sola di sugli vaglia inanti, che il disio amoroso al cuor s'invecchi.
Quale in colle aspro, all'imbrunir di sera, la vezza giovinetta pastorella va bagnando l'erbetta strana e bella, che mal si spande a disusata spera fuor di sua natia alma primavera. Così amor meco in sulla lingua snella desta il fior novo di strania favella, mentre io di te vezzosamente altera canto dal mio buon popol non inteso, e il bel Tamigi cangio col bell'arno. Amor lo volse, ed io all'altrui peso seppi ch'amor cosa mai volse indarno. Te fosse il mio cor lento e il duro seno a chi pianta dal ciel sì buon terreno.
Ridonsi donne e giovani amorosi, ma accostandosi attorno, e perché scrivi? Perché tu scrivi in lingua ignota e strana, verseggiando d'amor, e come tosi? Dinne, se la tua speme sia mai vana, e dei pensieri lo miglior t'arrivi. Così mi van burlando, altri rivi, altri lidi t'aspettan, e altre onde nelle cui verdi sponde, spuntati ad ora alla tua chioma, l'immortal guidardon d'eterne fronde, perché alle spalle tua soverchia soma? Canzon dirotti, e tu per me rispondi. Dice mia donna, e il suo dir è il mio cuore, questa è la lingua di cui vanta amore.
Diodati, e tel dirò con maraviglia quel ritroso io ch'amor spregiar solea, e de suoi lacci spesso mi ridea, già caddi ov'uom da ben talor s'impiglia. Né trecce d'oro né guancia vermiglia m'abbaglian sì, ma sotto nuova idea pellegrina bellezza che il cuor bea, portamenti alti, onesti, e nelle ciglia quel sereno fulgor d'amabil nero, parole adorne di lingua più d'una, e il cantar che di mezzo le mi spero, traviar ben può la faticosa luna, e degli occhi suoi avventa sì gran fuoco, che l'incerar gli orecchi mi fia poco.
Per certo i bei vostr'occhi, donna mia, esser non può che non sian lo mio sole, sì mi percuoton forte come il sole per l'arene di Libia chi s'invia. Mentre un caldo vapor ne sentì pria, da quel lato si spinge ove mi duole, che forse amanti nelle lor parole chiaman sospir. Io non so che si sia, parte rinchiusa, e turbida si cela, scossomi il petto, e poi in uscendo poco quivi da torno o s'agaccia o s'ingela. ma quanto agli occhi giunge a trovar loco, tutte le notti a me suol far piovose, finché mia alba rivien colma di rose.
Giovane piano e semplicetto amante, poi che fuggir me stesso in dubbio solo. Madonna, a voi del mio cuor l'umil dono farò divoto. Io certo e prove tante l'ebbi fedele, intrepido, costante, di pensieri leggiadro, accorto e buono. Quando rugge il gran mondo e scocca il tuono, s'arma di sé ed intero diamante, tanto del forse ed invidia sicuro, di timori e speranze il popoluse, quanto d'ingegno ed alto valor vago, e di cetra sonora e delle muse. Sol troverete in tal parte mendurro, ove amor mise l'insanibil lago.
The next up is Epitaphium Damonis. Sorry, Linda, you're muted.
Start again. We have Damon's epitaph, originally written in Latin, but I'm going to read it in English. First, the argument. Thyrsis and Damon, shepherds of the same neighborhood and following the same pursuits, were most intimate friends from boyhood. Thyrsis, who had gone abroad for the improvement of his mind, received news of Damon's death. Having afterward returned home and discovered that the news was true, he deplores himself and his solitude in this poem. Under the guise of Damon is here understood Charles Diodati, connected on his father's side with the Tuscan city of Lucca, otherwise an Englishman, a youth distinguished while he lived for genius, learning, and other most notable virtues. Nymphs of Himera, for you remember Daphnis and Hylas and the long-lamented fate of Bion, repeat this Sicilian song through the cities of Thames. Tell what words, what murmurs unhappy Thyrsis poured forth, and with what ceaseless complaints he disturbed the caves, the rivers, the eddying fountains, and the recesses of the groves, while he mourned to himself for Damon, snatched away, nor left deep night free from his lamentations as he wandered in lonely places. Twice the stork had risen with green ear, and as often had the garners counted the yellow crops, since his last day had borne Damon down to the shades, and Thyrsis was not there the while. Love of the sweet muse forsooth detained that shepherd in a Tuscan city, but when a full mind and the care of the flocks he had left behind called him home, and when he sat once more beneath his accustomed elm, then, at last, he felt in truth the loss of his friend. and began thus to vent his measureless sorrow. Go home unfed, my lambs, your troubled master is not free to tend you. Ah me, what deity shall I name in earth or heaven, now that they have torn you away, Damon, by inexorable death? Do you leave me thus, and is your virtue to go without a name and be merged with the obscure shades? But nay, let him who with his golden wand marshals the soul will it otherwise, and may he lead you into a company that is worthy of you, and keep far off the whole base herd of the silent dead. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Be sure, whatever comes, unless the wolf shall first see me, you shall not moulder in the tomb unwept. Your honour shall endure and long flourish among shepherds. To you next after Daphnis shall they rejoice to fulfil their vows, and next after Daphnis of you to speak their praises, so long as Pales, so long as Faunus love the fields, if it aught avails to have cherished the ancient faith and piety and the Palladian arts, and to have had a musical compere. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. These rewards for you remain uncertain, Damon. They shall be yours. But what will become of me? What faithful friend will stay close by my side, as you were wont to do in bitter cold, through places rough with frost, or under the fierce sun with grasses dying from drought? Whether the task were to go within spear's throw of great lions, or to frighten the ravenous wolves from the high sheepfolds, who will now lull my day to rest with talk and song? Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. To whom may I entrust my heart? Who will teach me to assuage my gnawing cares and to cheat the long night with pleasant conversation, when the mellow pears hiss before the cheery fire, nuts crackle on the hearth, and outside the stormy south wind is throwing all in confusion and comes roaring through the elms? Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Or in summer, when the day turns on mid-axle, when Pan takes his sleep hidden in the oak shade, and the nymphs return to their wonted seats beneath the waters, when shepherds lie concealed and the husbandman snores beneath the hedge, who will then bring back to me your blandishments, your laughter, Cecropian wit, culture and charm? Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Now I wander in the fields alone, alone through the pastures. Wherever the shady branches grow thick in the valleys, there I await the evening, while overhead rain and the southeast winds sadly moan, and the twilight of the forest is broken with gleams of light. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Alas, how my fields once tilled are overgrown with trailing weeds, and even the tall corn droops with blight. The cluster of grapes withered, unwedded to the stalk. The myrtle groves please me not. I am weary too of my sheep, but even they are sad and turn their faces to their master. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Tityrus calls to the hazels, Alphysebois to the mountain ashes, Aegon to the willows, fair Amyntas to the rivers. Here are cool fountains, they cry. Here are mossy greenswards. Here are the zephyrs. Here the arbutus whispers amid peaceful streams. But deaf to their songs, I gain the thickets and withdraw. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Then Mosper spoke, for he by chance had noticed me returning. Mopsus, who was versed in the stars and the language of birds. What is this, Thersis, said he. What black melancholy is tormenting you. Either you are wasting with love, or some star is casting an evil spell over you. Saturn's star has often been baleful to shepherds, and his slant leaden shaft has pierced your inmost breast. Go home unfed, my lambs, your troubled master is not free to tend you. The nymphs are amazed and cry, well, what will become of you, Thyrsis? What do you wish? The brow of youth is not commonly cloudy, the eyes stern, the mien austere. Youth seeks dances and nimble sports, and always love as its right. Twice wretched is he who loves late. Go home unfed, my lambs, your troubled master is not free to tend you. Hyas came, and Dryope, and Aegle, the daughter of Baucis. Aegle instructed in numbers and skilled on the lyre, but overly proud. Chloris came, a neighbour of the Indumanian river. Their blandishments, their comforting words are nothing to me. Nothing in the present moves me, nor have I any hope for the future. Oh, go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Oh me, how like one another are the young cattle that frolic through the fields, all comrades to each other under one harmonious law. None seeks from out the herd a special friend. Even so, the jackals come in packs to their food, and the shaggy wild asses by turn are joined in pairs. The law of the sea is the same, where on the desert shore Proteus numbers his troops of sea calves. Even that paltry bird, the sparrow, always has a mate with whom it happily flies about to every heap of grain, and returns at evening to its own thatch. Yet should chance strike one of them dead, whether the kite with hooked beak has brought this fate, or the clown has pierced it with his arrow, the other seeks a new mate to be henceforth its companion in flight. But we men are a stony race, a tribe vexed by stern fates, alien in our minds one from the other, in our hearts discordant. Hardly from among thousands does one find a single kindred spirit, or if fortune not unfriendly gives one such in answer to our prayers, yet in a day and in an hour when we least expect it, is snatched away, leaving an everlasting wound. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Ah, what wandering fancy lured me to traverse lofty cliffs and snowy Alps to unknown shores? Was there any such need to see buried Rome, even had it been what it was when Tityrus left his sheep and his pastures to see it, that I could part with so charming a companion, that I could put between us so many deep seas, so many mountains, forests, rocks, and roaring streams? Surely, had I stayed, I might at the last have touched the hand and closed the eyes of him who was peacefully dying, might have said, farewell, remember me when you go to the stars. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. Even though I shall never weary of remembering you, O Tuscan shepherds, youth devoted to the muses, yet here too were grace and charm. You too, Damon, were a Tuscan, training your lineage from the ancient city of Lucca. Oh, how elated I was when, stretched by cool murmuring Arno and the poplar grove that softens the grass, I lay, now plucking violets, now sprays of myrtle, and listened to Menalcas contending with Lycidas in song. Even I myself dared to enter the contest. Nor do I think I greatly displeased you, for I still have with me your gifts, reed baskets, bowls, and shepherd's pipes with waxen stops. Nay, both Dati and Francini, renowned for their eloquence and their learning, and both of Lydian blood, have taught my name to their beaches. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. These things the dewy moon used to tell me when happy and alone I was shutting my tender kids in their wattled coats. Oh, how often have I said, when already you were but dark ashes, now Damon is singing or stretching nets for the hair, now he's plaiting osiers for his various uses. What I then with easy mind hoped for the future, with the wish I was lightly seized and fancied present. Say, good friend, are you free? If nothing prevents us, let us go and lie down a while in the murmuring shade, by the waters of Cone or the feeds of Cassivellaunus. You shall tell me of your healing herbs and juices, hellebore, the lowly crocus, the leaves of a hyacinth, whatever plants the marshes yield, and tell me of the physician's art. Ah, perish the herbs and the simplex, perish the physician's art, since they have profited their master nothing. And I, for I know not what my pipe was grandly sounding. It is now 11 nights and a day, and then perhaps I put my lips to new pipes, but they burst asunder, broken at the fastening, and could no more bear the deep tones. I hesitate too, lest I seem conceited, yet I will tell the tale. Give place then, O forests. Go home unfed, my lambs. Your troubled master is not free to tend you. I would tell of Dardanian ships along the Rutupian sea, and of the ancient realm of Imogen, Pandarus' daughter, and of the leaders Brennus and Arviragus, and of old Belinus, and of colonists in Armorica under British laws. Then I would tell of Igraine, pregnant with Arthur by a fatal fraud, of the seeming face and counterfeit arms of Gorlois, Merlin's artifice. Ah, then if life remained, you, my pipe, shall hang on some aged pine far off and forgotten, unless forsaking your native songs you really sound a British theme. Why not a British theme? One man cannot do all things, cannot hope to do all things. Sufficient my reward, my honours ample, even if I am forever unknown and wholly without fame in foreign parts. If yellow-haired Ouse reads me, and he who drinks the waters of Alorn and Abra full of eddies, and all the woods of Trent, and above all my own Thames and Tamar, stained with metals, and if the Orkneys and their remotest waves but learn my songs. Go home unfed, my lambs, your troubled master is not free to tend you. These things I was keeping for you under the tough bark of the laurel, these and more besides. Then I thought to show you the 2 cups that Manso, not the least glory of the Chalcidian shore, gave me. A wonderful work of art they are, but Manso himself is wonderful. Round about they're decorated with a double band of carving. In the middle arc are the waters of the Red Sea and the odoriferous spring, and the far-off coasts of Arabia, and the trees dropping balsam amidst these the phoenix, divine bird, alone of its kind on earth, gleaming blue, with wings of many colours, watches aurora rise over the glassy waves. In another part, a great Olympus, and the whole expanse of heaven. Yes, and who would believe it? Here too is love, his quiver flashing arms and torch, his darts tipped with fiery bronze, all pictured in a cloud. He does not aim at little souls and the ignoble hearts of the rabble, but rolling his flaming eyes about, unwearied he ever scatters his missiles on high through the spheres, and never aims his shots downward. Hence minds immortal and forms divine are inflamed with love. You too are among these, Damon, nor does elusive hope deceive me. Surely you too are among these. For whither should your sweet and holy simplicity retire? Whither your spotless virtue? It is wrong to seek you in Lethe and Orcus. Tears become you not, and I shall weep no more. Away then, tears. Damon dwells in the purity of heaven, for he himself is pure. He has thrust back the rainbow with his foot, and among the souls of heroes and the everlasting gods, he quaffs the heavenly waters and drinks of joy with his sacred lips. But now that the rights of heaven are yours, stand by my side and gently befriend me. Whatever be now your name, whether you would still be our Damon, or whether you prefer to be called Diodati, by which divine name all the dwellers in heaven will know you. But in the forests you will still be called Damon, because a rosy blush and a youth without stain were dear to you, because you never tasted the pleasure of marriage. Lo, for you are reserved a virgin's honours. Your noble head bound with a glittering wreath, in your hands the glad branches of the leafy palm, you shall forever act and act again the immortal nuptials, where song and the lyre, mingled with the blessed dances, wax rapturous, and the joyous rebels rage under the thyrsus of Zion.
Next we have Sonnet 8. Sonnet 8. Captain or colonel or knight in arms, whose chance on these defenceless doors may cease, if ever deed of honour did thee please, guard them, and him within protect from harms. He can requite thee, for he knows the charms that call fame on such gentle acts as these, and he can spread thy name over lands and seas, whatever clime the sun's bright circle warms. Lift not thy spear against the muse's bow, the great Emathian conqueror bid spare. The house of Pindarus, where temple and tower went to the ground, and the repeated air of sad Electra's poet had the power to save the Athenian walls from ruin bare. Next we have Sonnet 9.
To a virtuous young lady. Lady that in the prime of earliest youth wisely hath shunned the Broadway and the green, and with those few art eminently seen that labour up the hill of heavenly truth, the better part with Mary and with Ruth chosen thou hast. And they that overween and at thy growing virtues fret their spleen, no anger find in thee, but pity and ruth. Thy care is fixed, and zealously attends to fill thy odorous lamp with deeds of light and hope that reaps not shame. Therefore, be sure thou, when the bridegroom with his feastful friends passes to bliss at the mid-hour of night, hast gained thy entrance, virgin, wise, and pure.
Next up, we have divorce tracts.
Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce, Book 1, the Preface. Many men, whether it be their fate or fond opinion, easily persuade themselves, if God would but be pleased awhile to withdraw his just punishments from us, and to restrain what power either the devil or any earthly enemy hath to work us woe, that then man's nature would find immediate rest and releasement from all evils. But verily, they who think so, if they be such as have a mind large enough to take into their thoughts a general survey of human things, would soon prove themselves in that opinion far deceived. For though it were granted us by divine indulgence to be exempt from all that can be harmful to us from without, yet the perverseness of our folly is so bent that we should never lin hammering out of our own hearts, as it were out of a flint, the seeds and sparkles of new misery to ourselves, till all were in a blaze again. And no marvel, if out of our own hearts, for they are evil, but even out of those things which God meant us, either for a principal good or a pure contentment, we are still hatching and contriving upon ourselves matter of continual sorrow and perplexity. What greater good to man than that revealed rule, whereby God vouchsafes to show us how he would be worshipped? And yet, that not rightly understood, became the cause that once a famous man in Israel could not but oblige his conscience to be the sacrificer, or if not the jailer, of his innocent and only daughter. And was the cause ofttimes that armies of valiant men have given up their throats to a heathenish enemy on the Sabbath day, fondly thinking their defensive resistance to be as then a work unlawful? What thing more instituted to the solace and delight of man than marriage? And yet the misinterpreting of some scripture directed mainly against the abusers of the law for divorce given by Moses hath changed the blessing of matrimony not seldom into a familiar and co-inhabiting mischief, at least into a drooping and disconsolate household captivity, without refuge or redemption. So ungoverned and so wild a race doth superstition run us from one extreme of abused liberty into the other of unmerciful restraint. For although God, in the first ordaining of marriage, taught us to what end he did it, in words expressly implying the apt and cheerful conversation of man with woman, to comfort and refresh him against the evil of solitary life, not mentioning the purpose of generation till afterwards, as being but a secondary end in dignity, though not in necessity. Yet now, if any two be but once handed in the church, and have tasted in any sort the nuptial bed, let them find themselves never so mistaken in their dispositions, through any error, concealment, or misadventure, that through their different tempers, thoughts, and constitutions, they can neither be to one another a remedy against loneliness, nor live in any union or contentment all their days. Yet they shall, so they be but found suitably weaponed to the least possibility of sensual enjoyment, be made, spite of antipathy to fadge together, and combine as they may to their unspeakable wearisomeness and despair of all sociable delight in the ordinance which God established to that very end. What a calamity is this! And as the wise man, if he were alive, would sigh out in his own phrase, what a sore evil is this under the sun!
This, therefore, shall be the task and period of this discourse, to prove, first, that other reasons of divorce besides adultery were by the law of Moses, and are yet to be allowed by the Christian magistrate as a piece of justice, and that the words of Christ are not hereby contraried. Next, that to prohibit absolutely any divorce whatsoever except those which Moses accepted is against the reason of law, as in due place I shall shew out of Phagius with many additions. He therefore, who by adventuring shall be so happy as with success to light the way of such an expedient liberty and truth as this, shall restore the much wronged and over-sorrowed state of matrimony, not only to those merciful and life-giving remedies of Moses, but, as much as may be, to that serene and blissful condition it was in at the beginning, and shall deserve of all apprehensive men, considering the troubles and distempers which, for want of this insight, have been so oft in kingdoms, in states and families, shall deserve to be reckoned among the public benefactors of civil and humane life, above the inventors of wine and oil, for this is a far dearer, far nobler, and more desirable cherishing to man's life, unworthily exposed to sadness and mistake, which he shall vindicate. Not that license and levity and unconsented breach of faith should herein be countenanced, but that some conscionable and tender pity might be had of those who have unwarily in a thing they never practised before made themselves the bondmen of a luckless and hapless matrimony, in which argument be whose courage can serve him to give the first Onset must look for two several oppositions. The one from those who, having sworn themselves to long custom and the letter of the text, were not out of the road, the other from whose gross and vulgar apprehensions conceit but low of matrimonial purposes, and in the work of male and female think they all have. Nevertheless, it shall be here sought by due ways to be made appear, that those words of God in the institution promising a meet help against loneliness, and those words of Christ, that his yoke is easy and his burden light, were not spoken in vain. For if the knot of marriage may in no case be dissolved but for adultery, all the burdens and services of the law are not so intolerable. This only is desired of them who are minded to judge hardly of thus maintaining, that they would be still and hear all out, nor think it equal to answer deliberate reason with sudden heat and noise, remembering this, that many truths now of reverend esteem and credit had their birth and beginning once from singular and private thoughts, while the most of men were otherwise possessed, and had the fate at first to be generally exploded and exclaimed on by many violent opposers. Yet I may err perhaps in soothing myself that this present truth revived will deserve on all hands to be not sinisterly received, in that it undertakes the cure of an inverted disease crept into the best part of human society, and to do this with no smarting corrosive, but with a smooth and pleasing lesson, which Lycidas hath no virtue, the virtue to soften and dispel rooted and knotty sorrows, and without enchantment, if that be feared or spelled, us hath regard us at once both to serious pity and upright honesty, that tends to be redeeming and restoring of none but such as there are the object of compassion, having in an ill hour hampered themselves to the utter dispatch of all their most beloved comforts and repose for this life's term.
Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce, Book 1, Chapter 2. The first reason of this law grounded on the prime reason of matrimony, that no covenant whatsoever obliges against the main end both of itself and of the parties covenanting. For all sense and equity reclaims that any law or covenant, how solemn or strait soever, either between God and man, or man and man, though of God's joining, should bind against a prime and principal scope of its own institution, and of both or either party covenanting. Neither can it be of force to engage a blameless creature to his own perpetual sorrow, mistaken for his expected solace, without suffering charity to step in and do a confessed good work of parting those whom nothing holds together, but this of God's joining, falsely supposed against the express end of his own ordinance. And what his chief end was of creating a woman to be joined with man, his own instituting words declare, and are infallible to inform us what is marriage and what is no marriage, unless we can think them set there to no purpose. It is not good, saith he, that man should be alone. I will make him a helpmeet for him. From which words so plain, less cannot be concluded, nor is by any learned interpreter, than that in God's intention a meet and happy conversation is the chiefest and the noblest end of marriage. For we find here no expression so necessarily implying carnal knowledge as this prevention of loneliness to the mind and spirit of man. To this Phagius, Calvin, Paretus, Revetus, as willingly and largely assent as can be wished. And indeed, it is a greater blessing from God, more worthy so excellent a creature as man is, and a higher end to honour and sanctify the league of marriage, when as the solace and satisfaction of the mind is regarded and provided for before the sensitive pleasing of the body. And with all generous persons married thus it is, that where the mind and person pleases aptly, there some unaccomplishment of the body's delight may be better borne with, than when the mind hangs off in an unclosing disproportion, though the body be as it ought. For there all corporal delight will soon become unsavoury and contemptible, and the solitariness of man, which God had namely and principally ordered to the knot of marriage, may in no case be dissolved but for adultery. All the burdens and services of the law are not so intolerable. Sorry, if I skipped a page. Sorry. Which God had namely and principally ordered to prevent by marriage hath no remedy, but lies under a worse condition than the loneliest single life. For in single life the absence and remoteness of a helper might inure him to expect his own comforts out of himself, or to seek with hope. But here the continual sight of his deluded thoughts without cure must needs be to him, if especially his complexion incline him to melancholy, a daily trouble and pain of loss in some degree, like that which reprobates feel. Lest therefore so noble a creature as man should be shut up incurably under a worse evil by an easy mistake in that ordinance which God gave him to remedy a less evil, reaping to himself sorrow, while he went to rid away solitariness. It cannot avoid to be concluded that if the woman be naturally so of disposition as will not help to remove, but help to increase that same God-forbidden loneliness, which will in time draw on with it a general discomfort and dejection of mind, not beseeming either Christian profession or moral conversation, unprofitable and dangerous to the commonwealth, when the household estate, out of which must flourish forth the vigour and spirit of all public enterprises, is so ill contented and procured at home, and cannot be supported, such a marriage can be no marriage whereto the most honest end is wanting, and the aggrieved person shall do more manly to be extraordinary and singular in claiming the due right whereof he is frustrated, than to piece up his lost contentment by visiting the stews, or stepping to his neighbour's bed, which is the common shift in this misfortune, or else by suffering his useful life to waste away and be lost under a secret affliction of an unconscionable size to human strength, against all which evils the mercy of this Mosaic law was graciously exhibited.
Chapter 3. How vain therefore it is, and how preposterous in the canon law to have made such careful provision against the impediment of carnal performance, and to have had no care about the unconversing inability of mind, so defective to the purest and most sacred end of matrimony, and that the vessel of voluptuous enjoyment must be made good to him that has taken it upon trust without any caution, when as the mind from thence must flow the acts of peace and love, a far more precious mixture than the quintessence of an excrement, though it be found never so deficient and unable to perform the best duty of marriage in a cheerful and agreeable conversation, shall be thought good enough, however flat and melancholious it be, and must serve though to the eternal disturbance and languishing of him that complains him. Yet wisdom and charity, weighing God's own institution, would think that the pining of a sad spirit wedded to loneliness should deserve to be freed, as well as the impatience of a sensual desire so providently relieved. 'Tis read to us in the liturgy that we must not marry to satisfy the fleshly appetite, like brute beasts that have no understanding. But the canon so runs, as if it dreamt of no other matter than such an appetite to be satisfied. For if it happen that nature hath stopped or extinguished the veins of sensuality, that marriage is annulled. But though all the faculties of the understanding and conversing part after trial appear to be so ill and so aversely met through nature's unalterable working, as that neither peace nor any sociable contentment can follow, 'tis as nothing. The contract shall stand as firm as ever, betide what will. What is this but secretly to instruct us, that however many grave reasons are pretended to the married life, yet that nothing indeed is thought worth regard therein, but the prescribed satisfaction of an irrational heat, which cannot be but ignominious to the state of marriage, dishonourable to the undervalued soul of a man, and even to Christian doctrine itself. While it seems more moved at the disappointing of an impetuous nerve than at the ingenious grievance of a mind unreasonably yoked, and to place more of marriage in the channel of concupiscence than in the pure influence of peace and love, whereof the soul's lawful contentment is the only fountain. But some are ready to object that the disposition ought seriously to be considered before. But let them know again that for all the wariness can be used, it may yet befall a discreet man to be mistaken in his choice. And we have plenty of examples. The soberest and best governed men are at least practised in these affairs. And who knows not that the bashful muteness of a virgin may oft-times hide all the unliveliness and natural sloth, which is really unfit for conversation. Nor is there that freedom of access granted or presumed as may suffice to a perfect discerning till too late. And where any indisposition is suspected, what more usual than the persuasion of friends that acquaintance, as it increases, will amend all? And lastly, it is not strange, though many who have spent their youth chastely are in some things not so quick-sighted, while they haste too eagerly to light the nuptial torch. Nor is it therefore that for a modest error a man should forfeit so great a happiness, and no charitable means to release him. Since they who have lived most loosely by reason of their bold accustoming prove most successful in their matches, because their wild affections at settling at will have been as so many deforces to teach them experience. When as the sober man, honouring the appearance of modesty and hoping well of every social virtue under that veil, may easily chance to meet, if not with a body impenetrable, yet often with a mind to all other due conversation inaccessible, and to all the more estimable and superior purposes of matrimony useless and almost liveless. And what a solace, what a fit help such a consort would be through the whole life of man is less pain to conjecture than to have experience.
The judgment of Martin Bucer concerning divorce to the Parliament. I would ask now the foremost of my profound accusers whether they dare affirm that to be licentious, new and dangerous, which Martin Bucer so often and so urgently avouched to be most lawful, most necessary, and most Christian, without the least blemish to his good name, among all the worthy men of that age, and since, who testify so highly of him. If they dare, they must then set up an arrogance of their own, against all those churches and saints who honoured him without this exception. If they dare not, how can they now make that licentious doctrine in another, which was never blamed or confuted in Bucer or in Phagius? The truth is, there will be due to them for this, their unadvised rashness, the best donative that can be given them. I mean, a round reproof. Now that where they thought to be most magisterial, they have displayed their own want, both of reading and of judgment. There to be as great, as ample, and as eminent in the fair progress of your noble designs as the full and goodly stature of truth and excellence itself, as unlimited by the petty precedents and copies as your unquestionable calling from heaven gives ye power to be. What are all our public immunities and privileges worth? And how shall it be judged that we fight for them with minds worthy to enjoy them, if we suffer ourselves in the meanwhile not to understand the most important freedom that God and nature hath given us in the family, which no wise nation ever wanted, till the popery and superstition of some former ages attempted to remove and alter divine and prudent laws for human and most imprudent canons, whereby good men in the best portion of their lives, in that ordinance of God, which entitles them from the beginning to most just and requisite contentments, are compelled to civil indignities, which by the law of Moses bad men were not compelled to. Be not bound about and straitened in the spacious wisdom of your free spirits, by the scanty and inadequate and inconsistent principles of such as condemn others for adhering to traditions and are themselves the prostrate worshippers of custom, and of such tradition as they can deduce from no antiquity, but from the rudest and thickest barbarism of anti-Christian times. But why do I anticipate the more acceptable and prevailing voice of learned Bucer himself, the pastor of nations? And oh, that I could set him living before ye in that doctoral chair, but once the learnedest of England thought it no disparagement to sit at his feet. He would be such a pilot, and such a father to ye, as you would soon find the difference of his hand and skill upon the helm of reformation. Nor do I forget that faithful associate of his labours, Paulus Phagius. For these their great names and merits, however precious soever, God hath now joined with me necessarily, in the good or evil report of this doctrine which I leave with you. It was written to a religious king of this land, written earnestly as a main matter wherein this kingdom needed a reform, should be purposed to be the kingdom of Christ. Written by him, who for any since the days of Luther merits to be counted the apostle of our church, whose unwearied pains and watching of our sakes, as they spent him quickly here among us, so did they, during the shortness of his life, incredibly promote the gospel throughout this realm. The authority, the learning, the godliness of this man consulted with is able to outbalance all that the lightness of a vulgar opposition can give to counterpoise. I leave him also as my complete surety and testimonial, if truth be not the best witness to itself, that what I formerly presented to your reading on this subject was good and just and honest, not licentious. Now that I have now more confidence by the addition of these great authors to my party. For what I wrote was not my opinion, but my knowledge. Even then, when I could trace no footstep in the way I went, nor that I think to win upon your apprehension with numbers and with names, rather than with reasons. Yet certainly the worst of my detractors will not accept against so good a bail of my integrity and judgment, as now appears for me.
Tetrachordon, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. To be informed aright in the whole history of marriage, that we may know for certain, not by a forced yoke, but by an impartial definition, what marriage is and what is not marriage, it will undoubtedly be safest, fairest, and most with our obedience to inquire, as our Saviour's direction is, how it was in the beginning. And that we begin so high as man created after God's own image, there want not earnest causes. For nothing nowadays is more degenerately forgotten than the true dignity of man, almost in every respect, but especially in this prime institution of matrimony, wherein his native preeminence ought most to shine. Although if we consider that just and natural privileges men neither can rightly seek nor dare fully claim, unless they be allied to inward goodness and steadfast knowledge, and that the want of this quells them to a servile sense of their own conscious unworthiness, it may save the wondering why in this age many are so opposite both to human and to Christian liberty, either while they understand not or envy others that do, contenting or rather priding themselves in a specious humility and strictness bred out of low ignorance that never yet conceived the freedom of the gospel, and is therefore by the apostle of the Colossians ranked with no better company than will worship and the mere show of wisdom. And how injurious herein they are, if not to themselves, yet to their neighbours, and not to them only, but to the all-wise and bounteous grace offered us in our redemption, will orderly appear. In the image of God created he him. It is enough determined that this image of God, wherein man was created, is meant wisdom, purity, justice, and rule over all creatures, all which, being lost in Adam, was recovered with gain by the merits of Christ. For albeit our first parent had lordship over sea and land and air, yet there was a law without him, as a guard set over him. But Christ, having cancelled the handwriting of ordinances which was against us, Colossians 2:14, and interpreted the fulfilling of all through charity, hath in that respect set us over law in the free custody of his love, and left us victorious under the guidance of his living spirit, not under the dead letter, to follow that which most edifies, most aids, and furthers a religious life, makes us holiest and likest to his immortal image, not that which makes us most comfortable and captive to civil and subordinate precepts, whereof the strictest observance may oft-times prove the destruction not only of many innocent persons and families, but of whole nations. Although indeed no ordinance, human or from heaven, can bind against the good of man, so that to keep them strictly against that end is all one with to break them. Men of most renowned virtue have sometimes by transgressing most truly kept the law. The wisest magistrates have permitted and dispensed it, while they looked not peevishly at the letter, but with a greater spirit at the good of mankind. If always not written in the characters of law, yet engraven in the heart of man by a divine impression. This heathens could see, as the well-read in story can recount of Solon and Epaminondas, whom Cicero in his first book of Invention nobly defends. All law, saith he, we ought to refer to the common good, and interpret by that, not by the scroll of letters. No man observes law for law's sake, but for the good of them for whom it was made. The rest might serve well to lecture these times, deluded through belly doctrines into a devout slavery. The scripture also affords us David in the showbread, Hezekiah in the Passover, sound and safe transgressors of the literal command, which also dispensed not seldom with itself, and taught us on what just occasions to do so, until our Saviour, for whom that great and godlike work was reserved, redeemed us to a state above prescriptions by dissolving the whole law into charity. And have we not the soul to understand this? And must we, against this glory of God's transcendent love towards us, be still the servants of a literal indictment?
Areopagitica. They who to states and governors of the Commonwealth direct their speech, High Court of Parliament, or wanting such access in a private condition, write that which they foresee may advance the public good. I suppose them, as at the beginning of no mean endeavour, not a little altered and moved inwardly in their minds, some with doubt of what will be the success, others with fear of what will be the censure, some with hope, others with confidence of what they have to speak. And we perhaps, each of these dispositions, as the subject was whereon I entered, may have at other times variously affected, and likely might, in these foremost expressions, now also disclose which of them swayed most. But that the very attempt of this address thus made, and the thought of whom it hath resource to, hath got the power within me to a passion far more welcome than incidental to a preface, which though I stay not to confess, ere any ask, I shall be blameless if it be no other than the joy and gratulation which it brings to all who wish and promote their country's liberty, whereof this whole discourse proposed will be a certain testimony, if not a trophy. For this is not the liberty which we can hope, that no grievance ever should arise in the Commonwealth, that let no man in this world expect, but when complaints are freely heard, deeply considered, and speedily reformed, then is the utmost bound of civil liberty attained, that wise men look for, to which if I now manifest by the very sound of this which I shall utter, that we are already in good part arrived, and yet from such a steep disadvantage of tyranny and superstition grounded in new principles as was beyond the manhood of a Roman recovery, it will be attributed first, as is most due, to the strong assistance of God, our deliverer. Next, to your faithful guidance and undaunted wisdom, Lords and Commons of England. Neither is it in God's esteem the diminution of his glory when honourable things are spoken of good men and worthy magistrates, which if I now first should begin to do, even after so fair a progress of your laudable deeds, and such a long obligement upon the whole realm to your indefatigable virtues, I might be justly reckoned among the tardiest and the unwillingest of them that praise ye. Nevertheless, there being three principal things, without which all praising is but courtship and flattery. First, when that only is praised, which is solidly worth praise. Next, when greatest likelihoods are brought that such things are truly and really in those persons to whom they are ascribed. The other, when he who praises, by shewing that such his actual persuasion is of whom he writes, can demonstrate that he flatters not. The former two of these I have heretofore endeavoured, rescuing the employment from him, who went about to impair your merits with a trivial and malignant encomium. The latter, as belonging chiefly to mine own acquittal, that whom I so extolled I did not flatter, hath been reserved opportunely to this occasion. For he who freely magnifies that what hath been nobly done, and fears not to declare as freely what might be done better, gives ye the best covenant of his fidelity, and that his loyalest affection and his hope waits on your proceedings. His highest praising is not flattery, and his plainest advice is a kind of praising. For though I should affirm and hold by argument that it would fare better with truth, with learning, and should affirm and with learning and the Commonwealth, if one of your published orders, which I should name, were called in, yet at the same time it could not but much redound to the lustre of your mild and equal government, when as private persons are hereby animated to think ye better pleased with public advice, than other status have been delighted heretofore with public flattery. And men will then see what difference there is between the magnanimity of a triennial parliament and the jealous haughtiness of prelates and cabin councillors that usurped of late, when, as they shall observe ye in the midst of your victories and successes, more gently brooking written exceptions against the voted order, than other courts, which had produced nothing worth memory but the weak ostentation of wealth, would have endured the least signified dislike of any sudden proclamation. If I should thus far presume upon the meek demeanour of your civil and gentle greatness, Lords and Commons, as what your published order had directly said, that to gainsay I might defend myself with ease. If any accuse me of being new or insolent, did they but know how much better I find ye esteem it to imitate the old and elegant humanity of Greece than the barbaric pride of Hunnish and Norwegian state lines. And out of those ages to whose polite wisdom and letters we owe that we are not yet Goths and Jutlanders, I could name him who from his private house wrote that discourse to the Parliament of Athens that persuades them to change the form of democracy which was then established. Such honour was done in these days to men who profess the study of wisdom and eloquence, not only in their own country but in other lands, that cities and signaries heard them gladly and with great respect, if they had aught in public to admonish the state. Thus did Dion Prusus, a stranger and a private orator, counsel the Rhodians against the former edict. And I abound with other like examples, which to set here would be superfluous. But if from the industry of a life wholly dedicated to a studious labours and those natural endowments, haply not the worst for 52 degrees of northern latitude. So much must be derogated as to count me not equal to any of those who had this privilege. I would obtain to be thought not so inferior as yourselves are superior to the most of them who receive their counsel. And how far you excel them, to be assured, Lords and Commons, there can no greater testimony appear than when your prudent spirit acknowledges and obeys the voice of reason, from what quarter soever it be heard speaking, and renders ye as willing to repeal any act of your own setting forth as any set forth by your predecessors.
If ye be thus resolved, as it were injury to think ye were not, I know not what should withhold me from presenting ye with fit instance wherein to show both that love of truth which ye eminently profess, and that uprightness of your judgment which is not wont to be partial to yourselves, by judging over again that order which ye have ordained to regulate printing, that no book, pamphlet, or paper shall be henceforth printed, unless the same be first approved and licensed by such, or at least one of such as shall be thereto appointed. For that part which preserves justly every man's copy to himself, or provides for the poor, I touch not, only wish they be not made pretences to abuse and persecute honest and painful men, who offend not in either of these particulars. But that other clause of licensing books, which we thought had died with his brother quadragesimal and matrimonial when the prelates expired, I shall now attend with such a homily as shall lay before ye, first the inventors of it to be those whom ye will be loath to own, next what is to be thought in general of reading, whatever sort the books be, and that this order avails nothing to the suppressing of scandalous, seditious, and libelous books, which were mainly intended to be suppressed. Last, that it will be primarily to the discouragement of all learning and the stop of truth, not only by disexercising and blunting our abilities in what we know already, but by hindering and cropping the discovery that might be yet further made both in religious and civil wisdom. I deny not but that it is of greatest concernment in the Church and Commonwealth to have a vigilant eye how books demean themselves as well as men, and thereafter to confine, imprison, and do sharpest justice on them as malefactors. For books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them, to be as active as that soul was whose progeny they are. Nay, they do preserve, as in a vial, the purest efficacy and extraction of that living intellect that bred them. I know they are as lively and as vigorously productive as those fabulous dragon's teeth, and being sown up and down, may chance to spring up armed men. And yet, on the other hand, unless wariness be used, as good almost kill a man as kill a good book. Who kills a man kills a reasonable creature, God's image. But he who destroys a good book kills reason itself, kills the image of God, as it were, in the eye. Many a man lives a burden to the earth, but a good book is the precious lifeblood of a master spirit, embalmed and treasured up on purpose to a life beyond life. 'Tis true, no age can restore a life, whereof perhaps there is no great loss, and revolutions of ages do not oft recover the loss of a rejected truth, for the want of which whole nations fare the worse. We should be wary, therefore, what persecution we raise against the living labours of public men, how we spill that seasoned life of man preserved and stored up in books, since we see a kind of homicide may thus be committed, sometimes a martyrdom. And if it extends to the whole impression, a kind of massacre, whereof the execution ends not in the slaying of an elemental life, but strikes at the ethereal and fifth essence, the breath of reason itself, slays an immortality rather than a life. But lest I should be condemned of introducing license, while I oppose licensing, I refuse not the pains to be so much historical as will serve to show what hath been done by ancient and famous commonwealths against this disorder till the very time that this project of licensing crept out of the Inquisition was caught up by our prelates and hath caught some of our presbyters.
Do we have Saulius Venclovas?
Yes, hello. This is part 4. In Athens, where books and wits were ever busier than in any other part of Greece, I find but only 2 sorts of writings which the magistrate cared to take notice of, those either blasphemous and atheistical or libelous. Thus, the books of Protagoras were by the leges of Areopagus commanded to be burnt, and himself banished the territory for a discourse begun with his confessing not to know whether there were gods or whether not. And against defaming, it was decreed that none should be traduced by name, as was the matter of Vetus Commedia, whereby we may guess how they censured libeling. And this course was quick enough, as Cicero writes, to quell both the desperate wits of other atheists and the open way of defaming, as the event showed. Of other sects and opinions, though, tending to voluptuousness and the denying of divine providence, they took no heed. Therefore, we do not read that either Epicurus or that libertine school of Cyrene, or what the cynic impudence uttered, was ever questioned by the laws. Neither is it recording that the writings of those old comedians were suppressed, though the acting of them were forbid, and that Plato commended the reading of Aristophanes, the loosest of them all, to his royal scholar, Dionysius, is commonly known, and may be excused if holy Chrysostom, as is reported, nightly studied so much the same author and had the art to cleanse a scurrilous vehemence into the style of a rousing sermon. That other leading city of Greece, Lacedaemon, considering that Lycurgus, their lawgiver, was so addicted to elegant learning as to have been the first that brought out of Ionia the scattered works of Homer, and sent the poet Thales from Crete to prepare and mollify the Spartan surliness with his smooth songs and odes, the better to plant among them law and civility. It is to be wondered how museless and unbookish they were, minding naught but the feats of war. They needed no licensing of books among them, for they disliked all but their own laconic apothegms, and took a slight occasion to chase Archilochus out of their city, perhaps for composing in a higher strain there than their own soldierly ballads and roundels could reach to. Or if it were for his broad verses, they were not therein so cautious, but they were as dissolute in their promiscuous conversing. Whence Euripides affirms in Andromache that their women were all unchaste. Thus may give us light after what sort books were prohibited among the Greeks. The Romans also for many ages trained up only to a military roughness, resembling most the Lacedaemonian guise, knew of learning little but what their 12 tables and the Pontific College with their augurs and flamens taught them in religion and law, so unacquainted with other learning, that when Carneades and Critolaus, with the stoic Diogenes, coming ambassadors to Rome, took thereby occasion to give the city a taste of their philosophy, they were suspected for seducers by no less a man than Cato the censor, who moved it in the Senate to dismiss them speedily, and to banish all such Attic babblers out of Italy. But Scipio and others of the noblest senators withstood him and his old Sabine austerity, honored and admired the men, and the censor himself at last in his old age fell to the study of that whereof before he was so scrupulous. And yet at the same time Naevius and Plautus, the first Latin comedians, had filled the city with all the borrowed scenes of Menander and Philemon. Then began to be considered there also what was to be done to libelous books and authors, for Nevius was quickly cast into prison for his unbridled pen, and released by the tribunes upon his recantation. We read also that libels were burnt, and the makers punished by Augustus. The like severity no doubt was used if aught were impiously written against their esteemed gods. Except in these 2 points, how the world went in books, the magistrate kept no reckoning. And therefore Lucretius without impeachment versifies his Epicurism to Memmius, and had the honor to be set forth the 2nd time by Cicero, so great a father of the Commonwealth, although himself disputes against that opinion in his own writings. Nor was the satirical sharpness or naked plainness of Lucilius, or Catullus, or Flaccus by any order prohibited. And for matters of state, the story of Titus Livius, though it extolled that part which Pompey held, was not therefore suppressed by Octavius Caesar of the other faction. But that Naso was by him banished in his old age for the wanton poems of his youth was but a mere covert of state over some secret cause. And besides, the books were neither banished nor called in. From hence we shall meet with little else but tyranny in the Roman Empire, that we may not marvel, if not so often bad, as good books were silenced. I shall therefore deem to have been large enough in producing what among the ancients was punishable to write, save only which all other arguments were free to treat on.
By this time, the emperors will become Christians, whose discipline in this point I do not find to have been more severe than was formerly in practice. The books of those whom they took to be grand heretics were examined, refuted, and condemned in the general councils, and not till then were prohibited or burned by the authorities of the emperor. As for the writings of heathen authors, unless they were plain invectives against Christianity, as those of Porphyrius and Proclus, they met with no interdict that can be cited, till about the year 400 in the Carthaginian Council, wherein bishops themselves were forbid to read the books of Gentiles, but heresies they might read. While others long before one's conscience to deal, or to read, or to lay by, till after the year 1800, is observed already by Padre Paulo, the great unmasker of the Trentine Council. After which time the popes of Rome, engrossing what they pleased of political rule into their own hands, extended their over men's eyes, as they had not before their judgments, burning and prohibiting what to be read, what they fancied not, yet sparing in their censures, and the books not many which they so dealt with, till Martin V by his bull not only prohibited, but was the first that excommunicated the reading of heretical books. For about that time Wycliffe and Huss, growing terrible, were they who first drove the papal court to a stricter policy of prohibiting, which course Leo X and his successor followed, until the Council of Trent and the Spanish Inquisition engendering together brought forth or perfected those catalogues and expurging indexes that rake through the entrails of many an old good author with a violation worse than any could be offered to his tomb. Nor did they stay in matters heretical, but any subject that was not to their palate they either condemned in a prohibition or had it straight into the new purgatory of an index. To fill up the measure of encroachment, their last invention was to ordain that no book, pamphlet, or paper should be printed, as if St. Peter had bequeathed them the keys of the press also out of paradise, unless it were approved and licensed into the hands of 2 or 3 glutton friars. For example, quote, "Let the Chancellor Cini be pleased to see if in this present work be contained aught that may withstand the printing," unquote. Vincent Rabata, Vicar of Florence. Quote, "I have seen this present work and find nothing athwart the Catholic faith and good manners, in witness whereof I have given," etc., unquote, Nicolai Cini, Chancellor of Florence. Quote, "Attending the precedent relation, it is allowed that this present work of Davanzanti may be printed," unquote, Vincent Rabata. Quote, "It may be printed July 15th, unquote, Friar Simon Mompe di Emilia, Chancellor of the Holy Office in Florence."
Sure, they have a conceit. if he of the bottomless pit had not long since broke prison, that this quadruple exorcism would bear him down. I fear their next design will be to get into their custody the licensing of that which they say Claudius intended, but went not through with. Vouchsafe to see another of their forms, the Roman stamp. Quote, imprimatur, if it seem good to the reverend master of the Holy Palace, unquote, Belcastro, vicegerent. Quote, imprimatur, unquote, Friar Niccolo Rodolfi, master of the Holy Palace. Sometimes 5 imprimaturs are seen together, dialogue-wise, in the piazza of one title page, complimenting and ducking each to other, with their shaven reverences. Whether the author, who stands by in perplexity at the foot of his epistle, shall to the press or to the sponge. These are the pretty responsories, these are the dear antiphonies, that so bewitch of late our prelates and their chaplains with the goodly echo they made, and besotted us to the gay imitation of a lordly imprimatur, one from Lambeth House, another from the West End of Paul's, so apishly Romanizing that the word of command still was set down in Latin, as if the learned grammatical pen that wrote it would cast no ink without Latin. Or perhaps, as they thought, because no vulgar tongue was worthy to express the pure conceit of an imprimatur, but rather, as I hope, for that our English, the language of men ever famous and foremost in the achievements of liberty, will not easily find servile letters enough to spell such a dictatory presumption in English. And thus ye have the inventors and the original of book licensing ripped up and drawn as lineally as any pedigree. We have it not that can be heard of from any ancient state or polity or church, nor by any statute left us by our ancestors, elder or later, nor from the modern custom of any reformed city or church abroad, but from the most anti-Christian council and the most tyrannous inquisition that ever inquired. Till then, books were ever as freely admitted into the world as any other birth. The issue of the brain was no more stifled than the issue of the womb. No envious Juno sat cross-legged over the nativity of any man's intellectual offspring. But if it proved a monster, who denies but that it was justly burnt or sunk into the sea? But that a book in worse condition than a peccant soul should be to stand before a jury ere it be born to the world, and undergo yet in darkness the judgment of Rhadamanth and his colleagues, ere it can pass the ferry backward into light, was never heard before, till that mysterious iniquity, provoked and troubled as the first entrance of Reformation, sought out new limbos and new hells wherein they might include our books, also within the number of their damned. And this was the rare morsel so officiously snatched up, and so ill-favouredly imitated by our inquisitorient bishops and the attendant minorities, their chaplains, that ye like not now though these most certain authors of this licensing order, and that all sinister intention was far distant from your thoughts when ye were importuned the passing it. All men who know the integrity of your actions and how ye honour truth will clear ye readily. But some will say, what though the inventors were bad? The thing for all that may be good. It may be so. Yet if that thing be no such deep invention, but obvious and easy for any man to light on, and yet best and wisest commonwealths through all ages and occasions have forborne to use it, and falsest seducers and oppressors of men were the first who took it up, and to no other purpose but to obstruct and hinder the first approach of Reformation. I am of those who believe it will be a harder alchemy than Lilius ever knew to sublimate any good use out of such an invention. Yet this only is what I request to gain from this reason, that it may be held a dangerous and suspicious fruit, as certainly it deserves, for the tree that bore it, until I can dissect one by one the properties it has. But I have first to finish, as was propounded, what is to be thought in general of reading books, whatever sort they be, and whether be more the benefit or the harm that thence proceeds.
Not to insist upon the examples of Moses, Daniel, and Paul, who were skillful in all the learning of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Greeks, which could not probably be without reading their books of all sorts. In Paul especially, who thought it no defilement to insert into Holy Scripture the sentences of 3 Greek poets, and one of them a tragedian, the question was, notwithstanding sometimes controverted among the primitive doctors, but with great odds on that side which affirmed it both lawful and profitable, as was then evidently perceived, when Julian the Apostate, and subtlest enemy to our faith, made a decree forbidding Christians the study of heathen learning. For, said he, they wound us with our own weapons, and with our own arts and sciences they overcome us. And indeed, the Christians were put so to their shifts by this crafty means, and so much in danger to decline into all ignorance, that the 2 Apollinari were fain, as a man may say, to coin all the 7 liberal sciences out of the Bible, reducing it into diverse forms of orations, poems, dialogues, even to the calculating of a new Christian grammar. But, saith the historian Socrates, the providence of God provided better than the industry of Apollinarius and his son, by taking away that illiterate law with the life of him who devised it. So great an injury they then held it to be deprived of Hellenic learning, and thought it a persecution more undermining and secretly decaying the church than the open cruelty of Decius or Diocletian. And perhaps it was the same politic drift that the devil whipped St. Jerome in a Lenten dream for reading Cicero. Or else it was a phantasm bred by the fever which had then seized him. For had an angel been his discipliner, unless it were for dwelling too much upon Ciceronianisms, and had chastised the reading, not the vanity, it had been plainly partial. First to correct him for grave Cicero, and not for scurril Plautus, whom he confesses to have been reading not long before. Next to correct him only, and let so many more ancient fathers wax old in those pleasant and florid studies, without the lash of such a tutoring apparition, insomuch that Basil teaches how some good use may be made of Margites, a sportful poem, not now extant, writ by Homer. And why not then of Morgante, an Italian romance, much to the same purpose? But if it be agreed we shall be tried by visions, there is a vision recorded by Eusebius, far ancienter than this tale of Jerome to the nun Eustochium, and besides has nothing of a fever in it. Dionysius Alexandrinus was about the year 240, a person of great name in the church for piety and learning, who had wont to avail himself much against heretics by being conversant in their books, until a certain presbyter laid it scrupulously to his conscience how he durst venture himself amongst those defiling volumes. The worthy man, loath to give offence, fell into a new debate with himself what was to be thought, when suddenly a vision sent from God, it is his own epistle that so avers it, confirmed him in these words: Read any books, whatever come to thy hands, for thou art sufficient both to judge aright and to examine each matter. To this revelation he assented the sooner, as he confesses, because it was answerable to that of the apostle to the Thessalonians. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. And he might have added another remarkable saying of the same author, to the pure, all things are pure, not only meats and drinks, but all kind of knowledge, whether of good or evil. The knowledge cannot defile, nor consequently the books, if the will and conscience be not defiled. For books are as meats and viands are, some of good, some of evil substance. And yet God in that unapocryphal vision said, without exception, rise, Peter, kill and eat, leaving the choice to each man's discretion. Wholesome meats to a vitiated stomach differ little or nothing from unwholesome, and best books to a naughty mind are not unapplicable to occasions of evil. Bad meats will scarce breed good nourishment in the healthiest concoction, but herein the difference is of bad books, that they, to a discreet and judicious reader, serve in many respects to discover, to confute, to forewarn, and to illustrate. Whereof, what better witness can ye expect I should produce than one of your own now sitting in Parliament, the chief of learned men reputed in this land, Mr. Selden, whose volume of natural and national laws proves, not only by great authorities brought together, but by exquisite reasons and theorems almost mathematically demonstrative, that all opinions, yea, errors, known, read, and collated, are of main service and assistance toward the speedy attainment of what is truest. I conceive, therefore, that when God did enlarge the universal diet of man's body, saving ever the rules of temperance, he then also, as before, left arbitrary the dieting and repasting of our minds, as wherein every mature man might have to exercise his own leading capacity. How great of virtue is temperance, how much of moment through the whole life of man. Yet God commits the managing so great a trust, without particular law or prescription, wholly to the demeanour of every grown man. And therefore, when he himself tabled the Jews from heaven, that omer which was every man's daily portion of manna is computed to have been more than might have well sufficed the heartiest feeder thrice as many meals. For those actions which enter into a man rather than issue out of him, and therefore defile not, God uses not to captivate under a perpetual childhood of prescription, but trusts him with the gift of reason to be his own chooser. There were but little work left for preaching if law and compulsion should grow so fast upon those things which heretofore were governed only by exhortation. Solomon informs us that much reading is a weariness to the flesh, but neither he nor other inspired author tells us that such or such reading is unlawful. Yet certainly, had God thought good to limit us herein, it had been much more expedient to have told us what was unlawful than what was wearisome. As for the burning of those Ephesian books by St. Paul's converts, 'tis replied the books were magic, the Syriac so renders them.
It was a private act, a voluntary act, and leaves us to a voluntary imitation. The men in remorse burnt those books which were their own. The magistrate by this example is not appointed. These men practiced the books. Another might perhaps have read them in some sorts usefully. Good and evil, we know, in the fields of this world grow up together almost inseparably. And the knowledge of good is so involved and interwoven with the knowledge of evil, and in so many cunning resemblances hardly to be discerned, that those confused seeds which were imposed on psyche as an incessant labour to cull out and sort asunder were not more intermixed. It was from out the rind of one apple tasted that the knowledge of good and evil, as two twins cleaving together, leapt forth into the world. And perhaps this is that doom which Adam fell into, the knowing of good and evil, that is to say, of knowing good by evil. as therefore the state of man now is, what wisdom can there be to choose? What continence to forbear without the knowledge of evil? He that can apprehend and consider vice with all her baits and seeming pleasures, and yet abstain, and yet distinguish, and yet prefer that which is truly better. He is a true wayfaring Christian. I cannot praise a fugitive and cloistered virtue, unexercised and unbreathed, that never sails out and sees her adversary, but slinks out of the race where that immortal garland is to be run for, not without dust and heat. Assuredly, we bring out not innocence into the world, we bring impurity much rather. That which purifies us is trial, and trial is what is contrary. That virtue, therefore, which is but a youngling in the contemplation of evil, and knows not the utmost that vice promises to her followers, and rejects it, is but a blank virtue, not a pure. Her whiteness is but an excremental whiteness, which was the reason why our sage and serious poet Spenser, whom I dare be known to think a better teacher than Scotus and Aquinas, describing true temperance under the person of Guion, brings him in with his palmer through the cave of Mammon, and the bower of earthly bliss, that he might see and know, and yet abstain. Since therefore the knowledge of survey of vice is in this world so necessary to the constituting of human virtue, and the scanning of error to the confirmation of truth, how can we more safely and with lesser danger scout out into the regions of sin and falsity than by reading all manner of tracts and hearing all manner of reason? And this is the benefit which we may have had of books promiscuously read, but of the harm that may result. Hence 3 kinds of usually reckoned. First is feared the infection that may spread, and then all human learning and controversy in religious points must remove out of the world. Yeah, the Bible is self, and that oft times relates blasphemy not nicely. It describes the carnal sense of wicked men not unelegantly. It brings in holiest men passionately, murmuring against providence through all arguments in Epicurus. In other great disputes, it answers dubiously and darkly to the common reader, and asks a Talmudist what ails the modesty of his marginal Kari. The Moses of all the prophets cannot persuade him to pronounce the textual shetiv. For these causes, we all know the Bible is self put by the papist into the first rank of prohibited books. The ancientest father must be the next removed, as Clement of Alexandria and the Eusebian book of evangelic preparation, transmitting our ears to a horde of heathenish obscenities to receive the gospel, who finds not that Irenaeus, Epiphanius, Jerome, and others discover more heresies than they will confute, and the oft for heresy which is the truer opinion. No boot, it is to say, for these and all the Harian writers of greatest infection, if it must be thought so, with whom is bound up the life of human learning, that they writ in an unknown tongue, so long as we are sure that these languages are known as well to the worst of men, who are both most able and most diligent to instill the poison they suck, first into the courts of princes, acquainting them with the choicest delights and criticism of sin, and perhaps did that to Petronius, whom Nero called his arbiter, the master of his revels, and that notorious ribald of Azaro, dreaded and yet dear to the Italian courtiers. I name not him for posterity's sake, whom Harry